7813
549
549
836.
836.
I'll repeat that: 07813 549 836, and that's Natalie should you have a problem.
Excellent.
Members are reminded to mute their microphones unless asked to speak. This helps prevent any background noise from interfering with the meeting. Members are asked to refrain from speaking across each other. If you wish to ask a question or make a comment, please indicate to myself by the chat or hand functions on Teams. Officers will be invited individually to deliver their papers. At the end of each paper, I will refer to the chat function to address any comments or questions from members. When discussions on the paper are completed, I will then ask for a proposer and seconder, and members are asked to propose and second via the chat function. Once the recommendations have been proposed and seconded, the Executive Support Officer, which is Lynn, will conduct a roll call to register members' votes, i.e. for, against or abstain, and I will then confirm the result of the vote. Hopefully we'll get through this without too much difficulty, but we have any technical issues, well, we'll deal with them when we come to them. And then the chair will then move to the next paper and invite the next officer to speak. So that's my initial introduction. Moving on to the agenda now for the meeting, we come on to a vote of thanks and welcome. Now, there's one additional item I want to say on this, but I will say initially, we'd like to give a vote of thanks, I'm sure, for Kelly Middleton, who has taken on a role at Telford now as a cabinet member and consequently has come off the Fire Authority. So I'd like to certainly propose a vote of thanks to her, and she has now been replaced by Councillor James Lavery from Donington in Telford and Wrekin to join in her place, and certainly we can welcome James to our Fire Authority. Hopefully James is amongst us. I've not seen his name come up, but hopefully he's there.
Yes, I'm here, thank you.
Yeah, well done, James. So can I then propose a vote of thanks for Councillor Kelly Middleton and also to welcome Councillor James Lavery? Are we all in favour of that?
Yes, in favour. I'd like to say if I can second that, Chair.
Please. Yes, okay. All in favour. Thank you very much. Kelly's been a very active member. I remember even having a dance with her at the fire do we had late last year in where was it? Albrighton Hall, wasn't it?
Yeah.
When we had a get together. Yes. So
that's right.
Yeah, that was a very, very good meeting. But so we welcome. We wish her well in the future, and welcome James, who will be, I'm sure, a very vital member of our authority going forward. We'll now come on to apologies. Sorry, there's one other thing I want to say. We heard only 2 or 3 days ago some sad news that Culdip lost his mother tragically in the last week, which is why he's apologised for today. And, you know, what I would like to do is, via Lynn, is propose that we actually send a letter from the Fire Authority to Culdip expressing our condolences and our deepest sympathies for his loss. Is that something you would all agree with?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yes,
okay,
agreed.
thank you very much. Hopefully, Lynn, we can pull that together.
Yes, Chair.
And I'll happily sign that because it is a sad loss, and that's why Culdip's not joined us today.
Thank you, Chair.
I'll come back to you now for apologies generally, but I thought I'd mention that prior to that.
Okay, Chair. Maybe if I could just do a quick roll call of the members so they know that everybody's here who should be.
Right.
Councillor Adams.
Present.
Councillor Blundell.
Present.
Councillor Carter. Councillor D. Councillor Hartin.
Yes, present.
Okay. Councillor Lavery.
Present.
Councillor Mellings.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Milner.
Present.
Councillor Minery.
Yeah.
Present.
Yes, I can see him. Councillor Pardy.
Present.
Is there?
Councillor Price.
Present.
Councillor Roberts.
Present.
Councillor Wynne.
Present.
Okay, I have apologies from Councillor Sahota and Councillor Thompson as well, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that.
Okay.
Right. Okay, well, we come to the usual comments I have to make now about disclosable pecuniary interests. Members are reminded that they must not participate in the discussion of voting on any matter in which they have a disclosable pecuniary interest and should leave the room prior to the commencement of the debate. Do any members have a disclosable pecuniary interest to declare?
Yes. Yeah, I have on 14A as I receive a widow's pension.
Fine, thank you for that, Paul.
I will close down my microphone.
Okay, you go on mute. Okay. Any other comments?
Yes. I'm included in that, am I? As I'm a pensioner.
Yeah, pension from a retired firefighter, yeah. Okay, also. Sorry, yes.
It's Anthea. Just to let you know, those that have a pecuniary interest, it's not sufficient just to shut down the microphone. They will need to leave the meeting and then be asked to rejoin by the support officer.
Okay. You hear that, you two guys? Yeah, you have to leave and then come back and get Lynn to reintroduce you.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure how to leave the room.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not sure. You'd have to just pop out of one room and go into another.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for that reminder, Anthea. Right, item 4 is the usual question. Lynn?
No public questions, Chair. There are none.
Okay, there are none. Right. So we move on now to the minutes. There's 2 sets of minutes here that we need a proposer and a seconder for, and any comments. The one is the 12th of February. I have to agree, do members agree the minutes of the Fire Authority meeting held on the 12th of February, and that will be signed by the Chair as a correct record. Do you have a proposer and a seconder for that? Pauline D. And seconder?
Second it. Karen.
Who's that? Karen Blundell.
Karen Blundell.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine, thank you. All in favour? Fine, okay, thank you very much indeed.
I abstained, Chair, I wasn't there.
Okay, yes, okay then.
Me too.
Moving on to 5B.
Chair, sorry, it's the chief here. I've noticed there's a comment on the right that Councillor Minery wanted to comment on the minutes.
Okay. That was on the
Yes, thank
second.
you, Chair. It's the minutes of the 20th of May.
Yeah, that's why I was waiting for the next set of minutes.
Yeah. There is and I think I'm just trying to find them. There's a lot of scrolling down to be done here. I think it's item 4, where it's referring to the changes in legislation. Yes, it is item 4. And the third paragraph contains a comment that Shropshire Council has deferred its AGM to later in the year. That is not accurate. Shropshire Council are not having an AGM at all. The legislation does permit authorities to omit it altogether, and that's what Shropshire Council are doing. So it's a correction to the minute. That's all.
It's cancellation rather than a deferment. Yeah.
Yeah, cancellation. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Chair,
Yes.
Chair, apologies. Just on that point, the minutes are meant to be an accurate record of the meeting that was held. So whether or not the comment is accurate, it's whether or not it's an accurate record of the actual meeting. And from memory, I think it was actually said at the meeting that Shropshire were deferring until later in the year. And in that case, the minutes would be an accurate record, irrespective of whether the minutes are correct. Of course, it could be minuted from this meeting that wasn't a correct comment to be included.
Yeah, that's fine. Yes, I think it probably was myself who might have said that, thinking it was a deferment. So I apologise if that was the case, but I think you're right. If that's an accurate record, then we can correct it when we do sign off the minutes to say that was brought up by David. So thank you for that. Okay. So we'll do we have a proposer and a seconder for those apart from that one item? Do we have a proposer and a seconder that we accept those minutes of the 20th of May? I'll propose if you like.
I'll second it, Chair.
Keith Roberts. Okay. All in favour? Thank you very much indeed.
Abstain because I wasn't there.
Okay. Right. Well, we'll move on to item number 6.
Abstain.
Sorry?
Abstain if I wasn't there, Councillor
No, you
Blundell.
weren't there. No, you weren't. No, I've got that down. Yeah. Okay. Item 6. This will be for Chris, who's the chair of the Strategy and Resources Committee. Do you want to come in here, Chris?
Thank you, Chair. This is Chris Mellings, chair of the Strategy and Resources Committee. I move that the minutes of the committee meeting held on the 12th of March be received and noted, subject to a slight amendment in minute 6 within the minutes, where it refers in paragraph 2 to the Fire Authority's annual meeting in June 2019. That should say June 2020. But subject to that small amendment, as I say, I move the minutes be received and noted.
And I'll second that as Vice Chair.
Okay, so that's proposed by Chris Melly and seconded by Nigel Harting. All in favour, members of that committee? Thank you very much indeed. Okay, that's that. So we'll now move on to item 7, and I understand Pauline's going to take this in the absence of Kuldip, Deputy Vice Chair for Standards, Audit and Performance Committee minutes.
Yeah, I wasn't aware I was going to, but I did chair that meeting, and I propose that we accept these minutes.
I'm going to take these all on block. These refer to item 7A, 10 and 15B, and 7A, 7B and 7C, 1 and 2.
Yeah.
We take them all on block. Do we have a proposer and a seconder for that?
I proposed, Chairman.
Pauline,
I'll second.
I've already seconded. Chair, could we be clear? At the outset, you said we must use chat rather than just speak. So I'm sitting here putting abstain or seconded or whatever it is, and other people are shouting out.
Yes, please.
Can we be clear as to what we're actually so that we don't get?
Let's abide by that. Let's keep on mute, people, if you would, until such time as you want to speak, and then put your hand. There's a hand in the middle of your table there to use. So I will keep online myself because I'm speaking most of the time. But if members would mute if they're not good, then it stops the background noise. Thank you very much. Thanks for that, David.
Oh, see that.
So,
Eric, I'm ever so sorry, but Councillor Blunt here. I'm on my mobile phone because my laptop's not working, so I don't appear to have any other way but to unmute myself.
Okay, understand that now. Now you've said that now, Karen, we can't do anything about that, but at least you're participating in the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So do we have a seconder for that? We had a proposal from Pauline. Do we have a seconder?
Councillor Minory seconded on chat.
David Minory, okay. And all in favour? Thank you very much indeed.
Chair, oh no, it's okay. Sorry, ignore me. Sorry.
Okay, we'll move on to item 8. Lynn, to come in on this one.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the list of meetings for the rest of the year for Fire Authority and the 2 main committees. Obviously, the other committees will be meetings will be called as and when needed. At the moment, we will carry on doing meetings by teams, but obviously, if that changes throughout the year, we will let members know. Members are just asked to make sure they've got those dates in their diaries, and it's just for information. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. We've got them there now, 16th of July standards, yeah. So the next meeting of the authority is the 4th of August. Right. Okay, thank you very much for that. We have to propose and second that they be agreed. Anybody want to make a proposal and a seconder on that one?
Chris, Councillor Mellings has proposed.
I'll second Lynn while I'm online anyway.
Thank you. All
in favour? Okay. Thank you very much. Right, item 9. This is where we ask Anthea to leave the meeting if she hasn't already done so.
Leaving now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. This is the appointment of a clerk and monitoring officer and deputy monitoring officer. I'm passed to Dave Myers.
Thank you, Chair. Members will have read the paper and are probably aware of the situation, but I will go through it for clarity.
Please, yeah.
As we're aware, Jonathan Etoff was appointed Clerk and Monitoring Officer to the Fire Authority in December 2008. And as Jonathan has now left Telford and Wrekin Council, it's necessary for a permanent Clerk and Monitoring Officer to be appointed. Currently, Anthea Lowe is acting as a Monitor Officer for the Authority in her role as Deputy Clerk and Monitoring Officer for the Authority. The provision of the Monitoring Officer from Telford and Wrekin Council is through a service level agreement which outlines the terms and conditions of that role, and that's been a rolling arrangement since the appointment of Jonathan Etoff in 2008. The roles of Monitoring Officer and the 151 Officer were originally shared between the 2 constituent authorities when the Shropshire and Wrekin Combined Authority was created, with Shropshire Council providing the 151 officer and Telford and Wrekin Authority providing the monitoring officer, which seemed a fair method of sharing those positions of responsibility democratically across the two authorities. The authority have some options on how they may wish to replace the monitoring officer, which I've detailed in the report. The first is around approaching Shropshire Council to provide a monitoring officer. This would be a step away from the original agreement and would require some agreement of both authorities and potentially create a conflict of interests if both the monitoring officer and the 151 officer were provided by a single authority. It would also necessitate the development of a contract and agreement to be drawn up by Shropshire Council with no prior determinations, which would result perhaps in a procurement exercise. Alternatively, we could consider the Fire Alliance with Hereford and Worcester. And as part of our collaborative responsibility, I think it would be absolutely right to do so. Currently, Hereford and Worcester Fire and Rescue Authority employ a full-time clerk and monitoring officer. And the question is, could that single role be shared across both authorities? However, whilst this may offer some synergies, the challenges are more service-specific. There would be an immediate challenge as to costs. If this were a 50-50 arrangement, the role would be split across the authorities, and that would immediately detriment Hereford and Worcester Fire Authority, as that role currently has a full-time establishment role within the organisation. There's also an expectation that the individual would represent at authority meetings, which would require both travel and time commitments beyond the current provision for that individual. There's also a potential for conflict of interest, because we know that whilst we're undertaking other political endeavours, it is important for both authorities to retain their sovereignty around the advice that they're given legally. The third option is to continue to use Telford and Wrekin Council and refresh the current service level agreement. This would ensure continuity of advice and scrutiny, and particularly whilst we're in the middle of any legal positions that we might be ongoing. We also have other legal service provision through Telford and Wrekin legal team, and this would supplement the advice coming from the monitoring officer. The continuance would also satisfy the sharing of responsibilities across both constituent authorities, which has proven effective and provided excellent value for money since 2008. So for the reasons above, the authority are recommended to approach Telford and Wrekin Council to continue to provide a clerk and monitoring officer to the authority under the terms of the present service level agreement. Anthea Lowe is the successor to Jonathan Etoff within Telford and Wrekin Council, and it's recommended that she similarly be appointed as monitoring officer and clerk by the fire authority. And it would be for Anthea, if she were appointed as monitoring officer, to appoint her own deputy. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, but that is the premise of the paper.
Could I ask for people to, I've something I want to say myself at this point, but perhaps I'll ask other people that want to comment prior to me speaking.
Chair, Councillor Pardy's indicated he'd like to speak.
Okay. Kevin? Yes,
Chair, I was just going to move that we accept the recommendation because it makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? What I was going to say myself, while Anthea is not in the room, is that it is vital that we do actually have this role fulfilled in replacement, particularly in light of ongoing situations with where we are with government and so on. And we've got a lot of work to do on that front. So it is vital that we have such a senior person of this nature and very capable person to fulfill this role. So I hope everybody is in agreement. Do we have a seconder for that?
Chair, Keith Roberts here, can I just butt in? Regarding David Minry's comments, there are some of us using the chat column and there are others just coming in. What are we doing, please? Because there's two, I've made a comment here and so has David Minry regarding this, item 9, but it hasn't been picked up.
Well, maybe I didn't pick it up myself, so I apologise. But if anybody wants to make a comment, please do so now.
Well, no, because I put on there, I would like to propose item 9, and David has seconded it.
Okay, well.
So I thought that's what we were doing, but it's not coming across like that where I am.
I don't really have any comments to make on that, Lynn.
So, Chair, if we have asked that members propose and second via the chat column, which we need to do. It also provides us with a record of who's proposed and seconded throughout the meeting as well. So it's either you can use the chat column to make the comments. If you wish to speak, if you use the hand function, and either myself or one of the other officers will pick that up and let the chair know. It's obviously the first big meeting we've done like this. There's a few teething problems. Also, Chair, just while we're on it, we need to start doing the named vote after each item, particularly for items such as this, where there is a decision to be made. Okay?
Okay, so we've got to go and do it by alphabetical order again, have we?
Thanks, Lynn.
Yes, Chair. Okay. So,
do you want to backtrack what we've already done? Do you want to backtrack and go back and to have that or not?
For the voting, Chair, no, it's fine. So long from this item forward, because obviously we're getting into some items that are fairly major decisions for the service. I need to have that vote recorded. And it needs to
apologise. I think it's one of the issues is the chat on the left-hand side.
I noticed that the Chief has his hand up, wishes to speak.
Sorry about that. Yeah, the chat's up on the left-hand side of the computer here, and the hands in front. So perhaps it's me that's missed one or the other. So I do apologise to people. I'll make sure I'm more vigilant going forward. So do you want to go through alphabetically now, Lynn, and see what people say?
Rod wants to speak.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I think if I might, the way we worked out the policy, the most useful way of doing it is for proposers and seconders to be noted in the chat, and for people to raise their hands if they want to talk, and then we can support the chair in making sure that everybody gets involved and doesn't get missed. I appreciate it's very difficult to write your questions down quickly into the chat bar. The other thing I wanted to just very quickly raise was with regards to this paper, and I appreciate it's moving through. It's also important or useful for us to independent advice within the alliance. So it's not to do with outside legal cases necessarily. It is particularly important in the alliance that where you have two sovereign entities entering into an alliance, that we're able to have clean and reliable legal advice in doing so.
Very much so.
Which leads us towards using Telford.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. So, do we now go to the vote, Lynn? Do we need to go through the vote alphabetically? You're on silent, I think.
You're muted, Lynn.
Apologies, Chair. Apologies, Councillor.
Little technical difficulties.
Councillor Roberts has, we'll get there. Councillor Roberts has proposed, Councillor Minnery seconded, and I will have to go through this vote now. So bear with me. I'll call out your names. If you can just say for or against or abstain. Councillor Adams.
Sorry, I've been waving my hand and no one's picked me up.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. What's the difference? Sorry, there are two sorts of votes that we can make. One is an ordinary vote where we say yes or no, and the other one is a recorded vote where the names are called out and we give out yes or no. What's the status of this vote?
Recorded.
This is a recorded vote on each item, isn't it? Appears to be.
Yeah. Why would we record on each item by person when we've never done that in the past?
Lynn?
Councillor Chair, if I may, Councillor Adams, we need to do the recorded vote because it's not possible for everybody to see everybody raising their hands and to establish how you're voting. So on my screen, I can only see 9 people at a time. Now, that's not necessarily all the members that I can see. So to go through, and also for people who are watching on the live stream, that they can know who has voted in what way. As I understand it, this is how other authorities and councils are doing it, and this is how we've been advised by legal to do it. So,
are you happy with that, Peter?
Well, it just seems unnecessary, but if that's the way, I'll go for the proposal.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
If I might, Chair, it also raises the other issue. Councillor Adams is quite right. He was sitting there waving his hand, perhaps, but we can't see him.
That's right.
So it's using the hand function on the computer is the only way because your screen won't come up unless you talk. I appreciate these are technical aspects, but that's why Lynn's doing the recorded votes as well.
I'll just make one comment, Chief. The sooner we get back to be able to sit around the table, the better. But there you go.
Well, that's not in my gift, I'm afraid, Chair, but I appreciate your sentiment.
I know it's not. No, it's just a comment I've just thrown in. Lynn, please carry on.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Blundell.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Carter.
4.
Councillor D.
4.
Councillor Hartin.
4.
Councillor Lavery.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Mellings.
4.
Councillor Milner.
4. 4.
Thank you. Councillor Minery.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Pardy.
4.
Councillor Price.
4.
Councillor Roberts.
Definitely 4 as the proposer.
Yes, thank you. As I said your name, I appreciated that, Councillor. Apologies. Councillor Wynne.
4.
Thank you, Chair. That's a unanimous vote for those proposals.
Right,
So just let
again.
I'll let Anthea back into the room now. Thank you. Just bear with me 1 second. Oh. Okay. Anthea, can I just check you're back in?
I am. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. You can continue now.
I'll just welcome Anthea back and say that was unanimous. So thank you very much indeed. And we can hopefully now continue on to item 10, which is for Joe to take.
Thank you, Chair. This is the final review, excuse me, of the financial performance for 1920. And the authorities asked to note the position of the revenue budget and the variances identified and approve where necessary, and also to note our performance against prudential indicators. The appendix to the report gives an overview of the budget as a whole, which I'm happy to take questions on after the presentation of the paper. But the variances that have been identified are listed on page 2 of the report, which we can go through. In terms of executive and resources, there's a balance on the pay and prices contingency, and this is largely down to a balance in the grant received for pension contributions. This is available for use in 2020-21. We have had the pensions grant received for 2021 as well, but this item will form part of the balance of the general fund that will be considered in the next paper on the statements of account. The next one is debt charges. The budget was increased in readiness for additional borrowing for costs on the Telford project and also some other capital projects. So we added 80,000 for Telford and 18,000 for other capital projects. But due to slippage on the capital programme, there's no borrowing has been required during 1920. Interest on investments, a larger number of investments has exceeded the current budget that we have for investment income. This budget has already been increased as part of the 2021 budget going forward. Utilities, on the previous monitoring report, we reported an underspend of 27,000. When we've come to the balances at the end of the year, we have some other adjustments to be made, and we've now have a net and overspend of 18,000, so that's putting that budget right. Hydrants, we have a small balance remaining after we've provided for outstanding works, haven't yet been completed. Onto service delivery, on the on-call system, additional hours has overspent. This isn't relating to operational hours, this relates to other areas such as vehicle movements, completion of development folders meeting attendance and fitness tests. So that area was overspent. Area command, this area covered the cost of the project manager for the Telford scheme. This was a seconded officer, and in line with the approach taken last year, this hasn't been taken from the funding set aside for the Telford programme. It's been absorbed in current salaries. Moving on to prevention and protection. Members will remember that we had a secondment put in place to complete a review into high-rise buildings earlier in the year. We have added some growth to the department as part of the budget for 2021, and therefore this secondment has overlapped with the growth. And that, sorry? Oh, I thought someone was speaking, I apologise. The project will be completed using the growth posts that have been added from 1st of April. And in terms of corporate governance, we have a balance on ICT staff. We have an ICT technician vacancy in the department, and also we have a balance on the budget following reorganisation of the department, and that's currently being used to second staff into the department as and when required. In terms of the ICT budget itself, we have an overspend to report there. Inflation has been added to aspects of the ICT budget during the year, but it's been identified that budgets for Firelink and Airwave haven't been inflated, and that adjustment that we've had to make at the end of the year has totaled 62,000. We've also had the introduction of network printers across the organisation. That's slightly over what was anticipated, and also increased call costs on mobile data terminals and tablets. That's increased by 20,000. So a number of items there causing that underspend. The net underspend on the revenue budget at Q4 was 171,000, and these variances have been taken into account as we look at the year-end position, which is following on the agenda. Are there any questions on the variances there before I move on to the rest of the paper? I've
got a couple of comments. Chris Mellings wants to come in on this one. And also Tracy Onslow has noted to wants to speak, and then on the appendix, David Minnery wants to speak. So I'll come to Chris first, if I may.
Thanks, Chair. Chris Mellings, Chair of Strategy and Resources. Thanks, Joe, for the report. So some of the questions I've got probably cut over into the following paper, which obviously brings the year together. I appreciate this is sort of focusing mainly around the position up to for the last quarter, effectively. But looking at the appendix, which is a very useful document. I know it only gives us the sort of headline, but it supports, I think, what the narrative says in the report, in the covering report as well. But if we look on under corporate governance, under the heading of corporate communications, if you look there, our spend for the year is almost as high as that on IT services. So I just wonder what we classify as corporate communications that make up that amount. That's the first question. On the non-pay budgets, under the same heading, we've assumed for the year that we would spend £10,000, but we've only spent just over 1,000. So what sums did the 10,000 budget assume? And why did we only spend 13% of that budget? I know in the table you refer to the overspend on ICT of 110, but obviously in the appendix it refers to an overspend of 123. So I just wonder, is there any more information about what the totality of that overspend represents? Under the heading of members, obviously we set a budget at the start of the year of 86,000, but we've come in quite a bit under that, which is no bad thing, at 74,000. And I just wonder what the underspend on that represents. In terms of the strategic alliance, and I know there's a specific paragraph in the covering report. I think it's fair to say that obviously one of the reasons for going into the alliance is not just financial. it's almost probably just as important that we're looking at enhancing resilience and capacity for both services, and obviously quite rightly the government encourage emergency services to collaborate. But I just wonder if it could be clear as to what exactly the costs are our contribution, because obviously I appreciate we're cost sharing of the alliance. I know the paragraph makes a reference of 36, but in the appendix it refers to 48. So it's just trying to understand what the finances are of that. As I say, it's not just about, and it's much wider than that, but obviously that's part of the picture, and I think it's important that members have an understanding as to what the position is at the moment, still though in its infancy, the alliances, and obviously working very hard to develop an effective programme. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. You want to respond on that, Jo, before I move on?
Yes, please, Chair. If I can start with the corporate communications pay and non-pay. We have looked at the corporate communications pay budget as we've closed the year end. That title is quite misleading because although corporate communications is an element of the service development team, which Jed oversees, it isn't the whole of that, and we certainly haven't spent 315,000 on corporate comms. So I have already requested that title is changed to service development when we go through into 2021. So that is Jed's team, which would include systems analysts and information officers and service development officers, as well as corporate comms. In terms of the non-pay element, there is a budget there of 10,000. 5,000 of this is for consultation. We haven't undertaken any external consultation in 1920, so that is not spent. We have some marketing and publicity money in there, which we spent a little bit of, but I think with the advent of the new corporate communications officers, we have done a lot of internal work in this area. And also there was £1,000 for conferences, which again hasn't been spent. But I anticipate that with the IRMP consultation in 2021, that the large majority of that budget will be spent. In terms of IT, could you repeat the question on that, Councillor Mellings? I didn't quite catch all of the question.
Chris, you there?
You're on mute.
Can you hear me now? Is that okay?
Yes.
Sorry, I was unmuting and then it was muting me again. Chris Mellings, the question I asked really was, I know the table in the covering report refers to the overspend being 110, but the appendix refers to 123. So I just wondered if there's more information about what the 123 in totality represents. Thanks, Jo.
Okay. If I can, Chair, the figure that's in the report, which is the 110, that is covered by the main areas. The other 13 would have been some quite small areas which we haven't necessarily listed as underspent, as overspent. So even though that is made up, there would be a number of smaller elements in the other budgets which we haven't chosen to report on the table. Okay. Going on to the members' budget, there is a 12,000 underspend on the members' budget. That isn't just allowances. It also includes travel and conference costs, and also subscriptions. And there have been quite a low spend on travel and subsistence during the year. The underspend on the allowances budget was just 3,000. So there are those other elements that do make up that 12,000. And finally, the cost of the alliance, the cost that we've reported and allocated from the service transformation staff reserve so far have been 27,000, and that represents the 50% of the ICT and digital transformation manager post. So that has been split with Hereford and Worcester. That's all we've reported for this year. As we move into 2021, there will be some costs associated with the fire control project within the Alliance. And again, we will be sharing that cost of that additional officer 50-50 with Hereford and Worcester.
Are you happy with that response, Chris? Chris?
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. I've got some other questions, but they're more relevant to paper 11, the next page. So I'll leave it there. But thank you, Joe, for the responses.
Okay, I'll pass on to David Minnery next, if I may.
Right, thank you, Chair. David Minnery here. My question is on the appendix. As we look down it from the top, the first section is headed Executive and Resources. It deals with the pay, then it deals with Other. Under the heading of Other, there's a line described as Finance. Budget figure is 109,500. The spend figure is 1.1 million, which looks a bit odd. When we look at the subtotals for that section, we've got a budget of 3.6 million, an apparent spend of 2.3 million, and a difference of 1.2. And yet this doesn't feature on the earlier part of the report where we're talking about variances, and this surely is, if correct, is the biggest variance of the lot. But I doubt that it is correct, because if one tries to add the figures downwards, it doesn't come to anywhere. The spend column comes nowhere near the 2.3 million as shown. So can somebody, you may not be able to answer it today, but can somebody please have a look at that and tell me what the real position is? Thank you.
If I can come back on that, Chair, the figures on there, certainly for finance, do look very odd given the size of the spend column there. This is because this is my budget. This contains the corporate movements such as contributions to and from reserves, also the grants that have come in for pensions, the debt charges, and because we weren't at the final position on the year, we had to do adjustments at the end of the year. There's a much clearer picture when you come to do the year-end calculations. So if we reproduce this now, it would look a lot cleaner, and the variances in there would line up very, very much so with the year-end balances that we've had. So it's not that we've overspent or underspent by $1 million. It's purely the corporate adjustments that we need to make at the end of the year. I will review the spend just to make sure that adds up. There is a minus sign on the finance one, which has come out very close to the end of that column, which may distort this, but I'll certainly review the appendix and ensure that it adds up.
Okay. Matt, I just suggest, Joe, if we do have this recurring, perhaps some comment within the report to say what this actually is, the reason for this might help.
Yeah, Chair, if I can just come back on,
yes, Dave.
These. I fully accept that as the answer, but I think, and you just hinted at it, I think always we need to bear in mind that these documents are going to the public, and a member of the public seeing that is going to be mightily confused. If a member of the Fire Authority hasn't had the penny drop, then you can be sure a member of the public certainly won't. So maybe, I don't know whether I was going to suggest that actually it may be better if this appendix didn't see the light of day, if it was purely a working paper of yours, Joanne, or if it does, then there needs to be some sort of explanation, because that shrieks off the page to anybody just having a casual look at it. Thank you.
Okay, if I can come back on that, Chair, that's completely noted. I understand the confusion by looking at that and what it might suggest. I think it is important for members to have an overview of the budget as a whole, but it may be that we need to explain that column a little bit more, perhaps take away the corporate elements so that you can view the operational and tactical areas of the budget as well. So I'll certainly work on that for the next round of monitoring. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got 3 more people who want to speak. Next is Tracy Onslow, and then we welcome John Thompson to the meeting, and he's indicated he wants to speak, and then finally Rod. So I could come to Tracy. Sorry?
Chair, I was only just indicating to say that I was
joining. Okay, John. Okay. Okay, thank you, and welcome, John, anyway. Tracy.
Thank you, Chair. Around the ICT overspend, I just wondered if I could ask, because my assumption was this is around things like now, increased use of the IT, people working from home, increased use of Teams and things like that. So I was then expecting to see an underspend in the utilities, because obviously there wouldn't be so much usage, but I didn't see that. So I wondered if you could just Where it says there about increased uses of terminals and tablets, what that increased usage was, is that by officers or is that by staff? Or that was the first one. And the second one, and I thought Councillor Mellings was going to steal my thunder then, because I was going to say we've obviously got some costs associated to the Strategic Alliance, and I know you were working on it when I last asked about this. Have there been any savings attributed to those plans now? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, I'll pass to Joe to start with, and then maybe Rod wants to come in onto that as well.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the first question around the IT and possible reductions due to us all working from home, this represents the fourth quarter of 2019-20, so we wouldn't have actually hit the point at which everyone went home, because that probably started at the very, very end of March. So that wouldn't have featured just in this. We'll probably see those savings in the next quarter. Okay, and in terms of the increased costs on MDTs and calls, again, that isn't related to the pandemic, but it is related to the extra use of tablets and the MDTs on the trucks, and that's generated more costs for the ICT budget. Okay. There is a paper later on the agenda around the Alliance and some of the efficiencies and savings that have been identified. I don't know, Rod, if you'd like to come in on this and perhaps defer until we get to that paper to discuss those efficiencies.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joe, Chair. I would suggest that the answer to the second part of the question should become more obvious, and if there's anything remaining at the end of the Alliance paper, then I'm sure we can field it there. With regards the costs and the Deputy PCC's question about would there be a saving in utilities, not greatly. We still need to maintain our fire stations, still need to be open, our headquarters still needs to be open. So, unfortunately, we are scouring the bucket to look for savings, but at the moment they're not obvious.
Okay. Okay. Are you happy with that response, Tracy? Okay. Well, I've come, and Rod, you've said your piece now, so perhaps we'll move on to item 11. We've got to give a recommendation first, though, and we've got to go through the process, I believe, to have a proposal and a seconder for item 10 before we do that.
Chair, Councillor Nigel Harton was indicating, but then has taken his hand down.
Yes. All it was, Chair, was that I wasn't sure whether, when Lynn was introducing people, whether she'd introduced Tracy as the Deputy PPC, PCC. So I just was making that point, really. But I think Rod actually introduced you, Tracy, anyway.
Okay. Okay. So
apologies, Chair.
Do you have a proposer and the seconder for this item 10?
Chair, Councillor Mellings has proposed and Councillor Minnery has seconded.
Okay, you want to go through the system
I'll
again?
do the vote. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Adams?
For.
Councillor Blundell? Councillor Blundell?
Can't hear her.
Okay. I'll come back to that in a second. Councillor Carter?
For.
Councillor Day?
For.
Councillor Hartin?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Lavery?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mellings proposed. Councillor Milner?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Minnery seconded.
Yeah, for.
Thank you. Councillor Pardy?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Price?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Wynne?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Blundell, is she back with us? Right. Okay. If we can carry on to the next item, Chair, and I'll see if I can contact.
Get back to her. Okay.
Thank you.
Move on to item 11. Statement of accounts, and we come back to Joe. Joe?
Thank you, Chair. I was just trying to get off mute.
Okay.
This is the holding paper for the statement of accounts for 2019-20. The authorities asked to note the final position on the revenue budget and the general fund, and also approve use of the general fund balance. The accounts are usually produced in accordance with the Accounts and Audit Regulations 2015, and these state that draft accounts should be approved by the 31st of May and published by the 31st of July. But due to the pandemic, the Accounts and Audit Amendment Regulations 2020 were published, and that we now require a draft sign-off of the 31st of August and a publication date of the 30th of November. We've tried to continue to work to the original timetable and aim to get our year-end completed by the end of May. We've had a slight delay, but we had the draft accounts signed off by the Treasurer on the 15th of June. The accounts are currently being audited by Grant Thornton and will be presented to Standards Audit and Performance Committee in July. Depending on the progress with the audit and the current circumstances, this may be moved to the September meeting, but we'll still be within the 30th of November deadline. And obviously some of the information in this paper may change as a result of any audit amendments that we have to make. Section 4 of the report provides some background in terms of the budget and the expenditure during the year. So members agreed a budget of £22.2 million in February for the year. Regular updates have been brought to members, and over the 3 quarters and the 4 quarters that we've had during the year, we've already had approved 738,000 of underspend. Included within these are the £360,000 savings on watches, and this is part of the IRMP shift pattern change project, and those costs have been removed from the budget from 2021. So those costs would have been anticipated, those savings would have been anticipated. And also, members may remember that last year we brought forward just over 200,000 for possible back pay on the 18-19 Firefighters Pay Award. This wasn't used, there were no further payments to be made, so this has now been declared as an underspend. So that's quite a chunk of the environments that have already been approved. The actual outturn for the year was 21.2 million. We identified further underspends of 298,000, and they're detailed on the paper on page 3. And we also received £112,000 in grant over and above that anticipated. That was business rates grant and also distribution of the business rates levy account. So these are grants that are paid to us during the year that we're not aware of when the budget is set. The 167,000 is listed there on the report. Because we've just produced the final monitoring report, there are residual balances in a number of areas, and so I'm happy to take any questions on those, but quite a small residual at the end of the year. £131,000 of the general fund balance will be slipped forward for use in 2021. This includes the balance of the provision on legal fees for the governance of the authority. As members will remember, we had a 70,000 fund set aside for external legal costs. 38,000 have been spent, and so 31,000 will be taken forward. We also received some COVID-19 support grant at the end of March. We spent a very small amount of that, so that's been rolled forward to spend in 2021. And there are some development costs which have been asked to roll forward. Those are for things anticipated in 1920 but won't happen until 2021. And some other small elements there, property maintenance, and some work there that again was anticipated that will be done this year. And finally there, another note of the income that we received that we weren't expecting. So in terms of the use of the general fund balance, the balance at the end of 1920 is just over £1 million, 1.148 million. If we remove the slippage that is reported there on page 3, we're left with a balance for reserves of just over £1 million. The paper then goes on to look at some of the areas that we think we might need to take into consideration when we look at distributing that fund balance into reserves. So first of all, the COVID-19 pandemic. There's clearly additional pressures on the service due to the response to the pandemic. The majority of those have been incurred from April onwards. There was a very small amount spent at the very end of March, but the majority of that will be from April onwards. We've received £445,000 in total in grant from government, so we can cover one-off expenditure in response to the pandemic with that amount of money. But it's currently unclear about how the pandemic will affect revenue going forward, because we need to consider the effect on the constituent authorities in terms of reduced business rates and council tax receipts. And this will indirectly affect the authority through our collection fund deficits and surpluses, and also our council tax base. Members will be aware that we do enjoy quite a large surplus each year on our collection fund, and obviously we need to ensure that if there's a deficit anticipated in future years, that we've got money to plug that gap while things come back to some sort of normality. And we also need to consider the costs that have been borne by the government in terms of protecting individuals and businesses while this lockdown has happened, and also that could affect future grant settlements, and again that's an unknown currently. So for this reason, members could consider an increase to the income volatility reserve. That currently stands at 237,000, but that reserve could be used to sort of smooth out any deficits in our receipts in the next couple of years. In addition, the equipment replacement reserve has been effective in funding any anticipated items of expenditure. So these are things that might crop up during the year, but we wouldn't necessarily want to fund them in the budget regularly. So that's proved useful in keeping that base budget down and just responding to things as and when they're required. And also the STP staff reserve, again, members have added money to that reserve in previous year ends. This makes more funds available for capital to support change, and also to support the cost of the alliance with Hereford and Worcester. Obviously those costs will continue into future years, and we need to make sure that we've got the funds available to support that alliance fully. And finally, in the past we have recommended that the majority of the general fund balance goes to capital reserves. Obviously this enables us to fund the capital programme and major projects like Telford without borrowing, and that means we're saving debt charges into the future. We know there will be some borrowing needed over the next couple of years, but anything that we can add into those reserves will obviously reduce that cost into the long term. When we wrote the previous paper on financial performance for Q4, we did refer to the ongoing pressures of pension contributions, and obviously that's another consideration for funds. But in light of the other issues that are currently upon us, certainly with the coronavirus issues, and the fact that we will have another £1 million grant for 2021, pension contributions is something that doesn't perhaps come up to the top of the list when we look at other things that we're currently considering. So the options are there for members to consider, and there is a proposal there of a possible contribution into reserves if that's required. So I'm happy to take any questions on any of that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Joe. Chris Mellings has indicated he wishes to speak. Chris?
Thanks, Chair. Chris Mellings, Chair of Strategy and Resources. Thanks, Joe, for the paper, and thanks to you and all the team for the work that they've done as part of the close down. Obviously, very different circumstances this year, but thanks for everybody's efforts. A comment and then a couple of questions, if I may, please, Chair. I think, again, certainly given where we are this year, it's a very pleasing outturn for 2019-20, and part of this is part of our longer-term financial planning that sits in our medium-term financial plan. And we know that there are pressures going forward, and there is a little bit of difficulty with being able to long-term, simply because the government's forward-looking spending review hadn't been put in place. Obviously, it was complicated by the general election before Christmas, and now, of course, we've got into the COVID situation, has complicated it even further. But hopefully, the work that we've done over a number of years now and going forward will mean that we've got a reasonably or a pretty good handle on our financial situation and got the ability to plan to ensure that we can continue to meet the needs of the service and our local communities going forward. In terms of use of the reserves, I think Joe's recommendation in terms of the income volatility reserve is a sensible one. Obviously, the principal authorities are suffering financially, and there is an indication that the collection in council tax is a bit slower at the moment. That may pick up as we go through the rest of the year and the economy starts to get back on track. But because we have to pick up any deficits, I know we benefited from any surpluses, to make that provision in the short term, I think is a sensible one. So I think as I say, it is very pleasing overall. There are still issues going forward that we need to ensure that we've got a good handle on and able to make provision for. In terms of questions, thanks for the information in terms of the legal cost to do with the JR. That was one that I had, so thank you for covering that. But on the same sort of theme to do with legal services, and these are only small, compared to the budget, relatively small variations. There's an underspend of 28,000 on legal services. So just be interested to know what that relates to. Then conversely, under the income and grant heading, there's an overspend of 24,000. So again, just wonder what that may relate to. And finally, I suppose I could have asked this under the previous paper, but given that it was in the final quarter, I just wonder what obviously it seems a long time ago now, but in February and part of March, we were experiencing severe flooding. So obviously our sort of call out, et cetera, and our work on that was quite high. So I just wonder what was the cost to the service of our response to the floods earlier this year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Joe?
Thank you. If I can, Chair, if I take the questions in order. In terms of legal services, the 28,000 that's listed on the report, again, the title does need to be changed, and I accept that. I will update that. That is the budget area, and that includes the members' allowances, which we spoke about on the previous paper. So there is actually a 16 underspend on legal services and a 12,000 on members. The legal services is put in place, and rather than it being a one-off cost each year, it's very much an ad hoc hourly payment. So if there haven't been many issues that we've had to involve legal with, that cost can sometimes be lower than other years. It depends on the work that we're actually doing. So that is made up of members and of legal.
Okay.
In terms of income and grant, we've got a net unachievement of income there. The New Dimension grant that we've received probably since about 2005 has been diminishing over recent years. It's still in the budget at its full amount, and that has been dwindling. So we do have around about 43,000 to report over there. That it was income that we anticipated that we haven't received, but we have received around 19,000 in additional costs. These would be sales of scrap items from workshops. We have out of hours service that we run from our control for Telford and Wrekin. And also any insurance claims that need to go through the accounts, they would also sit as income. So there is an element there of increased income, but we have got some grant there that hasn't been realised. And in terms of flooding, there were additional costs, obviously, to the service to respond to the floods in February. We had some whole time overtime costs and also retained officer additional hours. The costs that were over and above our usual spend were around £40,000. So for that reason, there isn't a Belvin scheme in place, but it's around 40,000.
Chris, are you happy with that response?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Appreciate that.
Okay.
Can I just make one comment? Just going on from what Chris has said earlier, I attended the Fire Services Management Committee last week, and this issue of the ongoing difficulties that government have had over recent years in putting forward a long-term detail for spend, and it was said there that there was anticipated when the Chancellor makes his next statement, it will be for the next 3 years, and I just hope that is the case for the spending review, because we do need some certainty going forward rather than just a 1 year review which has happened over the last 2 or 3 years. So let's hope that will be in place. And just finally, the comments on floods is very, very valid, and it's why I raised this at the NJC, because going forward with climate change, this is likely to be added pressures to our budgets and also added pressures to the response that our firefighters have to give. it widens the role, if you like, of firefighters generally, because it's something that's not going to go away. Chris, are you coming back there? You're proposing...
No, Chair, we just proposed the recommendation.
The comments ask for a recommendation and a seconder here from items A and B as a recommendation. So a proposer and a seconder, please. Chris is proposing, I understand it. Do we have a seconder?
I'll be the second, Chair.
Okay, Nigel, you're seconding. So that's back down to Lynn now for a run through the members, if I may.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Adams?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Blundell?
We're having a little difficulty, I think, although she is...
I think so. Yes. Okay. Councillor Carter?
4.
Councillor D?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Harton seconded. Councillor Lavery?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Mellon's proposed. Councillor Milner?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Minery?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Pardy?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Price?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Wynne?
4.
Thank you. That's everybody, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. We'll now move on, if we may, to item 12, which is the draft integrated risk management plan. I know it was originally Guy, and Guy will be speaking, but Rod indicated he wanted to have an initial chat first. Rod?
Thank you, Chair. It was really to save Guy having to do the preamble and the lead-in. What I wanted to do was just to remind members, firstly, that this IRMP and the way we've approached it is one of the 4 fundamental projects within the Alliance. The importance of that is it brings the 2 services planning programmes together, and it also brings their methodology together. The outcome of doing that is that there are some other key points that are starting to come together, such as the way we measure risk and the way we measure our performance. So you'll see within the IRMP that there are new ways, or we have a revised way of measuring performance, and that will in due course be adopted by Hereford and Worcester as well. So these are, as I say, one of the foundations. The intention was you'll recall that our IRMP is now, we've had a gap year, as it were, or an extension year, and the point of that was to defer the IRMP to bring the 2 planning cycles in line. And the good news is that the 2 projects are working together in harmony now, so both of the RMPs will be in a position to be delivered as of April next year. So we'll be aligned with our partners in the Alliance at that stage.
Good.
What we're doing today, though, is bringing forward to you the IRMP as it has been developed, but it's been brought forward as a consultation document. So it doesn't look like the finished IRMP. It looks like a document that we're going to take to the public. Embedded within it are a number of questions, and those are to elicit greater engagement from the public. Guy's going to talk to you a bit more about how we're going to achieve that engagement, but that's why when you're looking through the document, it's not written yet as a strategy for the service. It is a set of proposal that we intend to consult on.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that Guy will also be able to show you a mock-up of what it might look like when it does get to the public, because it looks a bit dry at the moment. We just had to agree the words first off. And finally, just a reminder to you that this is being developed with the help, support, direction and guidance of STAG, and we're bringing it forward from STAG. So it's at this point now for the whole fire authority to consider if it meets their aims, and really to give us the green light to go ahead and consult with it. So that's it from me, Chair. Over to Guy, really, for some more detail.
I'll just say, I was going to raise that it had been STAG as a recommendation to the fire authority to consider. So I will pass now to Guy. Thank you, Guy.
Right, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Chief Officer. The IRMP process, as Rod has said, is pivotal to our work in the community. It's how we resource to the risk of Shropshire as a whole, and we recognise how that changes. So in front of you today is a report that details how we've carried out this draft consultation, how we've got to the position we are now, and what we propose to do as we move forward, which is obviously with your authorisation and permission today. So the IRMP itself has been set out very much, and it is attached as an appendice, but it is a story of our service, where Shropshire Fire and Rescue Service is now, what we have delivered, how we have performed, how we have met the risk that has faced Shropshire Fire, the county of Shropshire, and how that risk is changing. So the second part is very much a look at how the population is changing, how the demographics are changing, where our incidents are, what the data suggests. It's a really holistic look that pulls together all aspects of Shropshire, Telford and Wrekin and the risk that is in this county. For that part, the methodology we've joined with Hereford and Worcester as part of the Alliance has been really crucial, so that we know that we are both looking at the same aspects to formulate what risk is. So for community risk, we look at people and place, the healthy lives agenda, deprivation, economy, transport and travel, the environment, and of course our heritage, which all three counties are rich in. And we also look at the organisational risk, the aspects such as maintaining our capacity and resilience, our financial sustainability, the on-call sustainability that provides us with the best mainland availability in England at present. So the technology that sits behind our service delivery and events such as today, but also the technology that will support our staff, our on-call firefighters and all staff in the organisation as we move forward, not just here but in the Alliance. We look at high-rise, high-risk premises and the learning really that's fallen out of significant events such as Grenfell Tower and the terrorist attacks in Manchester. And finally, obviously, as part of our organisational risk is how we maintain and develop our ICT moving forward, the infrastructure that supports basically, our service delivery, which has been the foundation on the very successful audit we had from the Home Office. So that is the process of assessing risk, and if you go through the document, it will spell it out and it will tell you exactly the challenge of independent living, especially in rural communities, a very sparse county. It will tell you the story of diversification of industry, especially in agriculture, where the challenges in some of the more remote areas of our county are being met by innovation, where you will potentially find anything on a farm, from a power generation facility to a campsite or glamping pods in a field. There's all sorts going on in Shropshire. And also, it recognises the big differences between both local authority areas and the challenges that involve deprivation, the challenges that we have in preventing and protecting. So in essence, it brings us back to the core function of an RMP, is basically how we are going to deploy our resources. How do we meet the changing risks that are apparent in Shropshire? So having spelt out what the picture is in Shropshire, what the risk is and how it's changed, the second part of the RMP is about how we are going to manage and resource to reduce that risk. And it goes through into 5 key proposals, which are, we will revise and clarify really our response standard. And this is a big piece of work because this sits across the Alliance and will give Hereford and Worcester Fire and Rescue Service the opportunity to be more aligned with us in the future, and also with it the opportunity for us all to measure against each other and share best practice. So it's a great opportunity. It's not a change to our current response standard in the fact that we propose a 10-minute response standard for an urban area, from a 15-minute response standard for a town and fringe, and a 20-minute response for a rural. That has been the case, and that was the case previously. However, we had an average of the 3 combined that brought together a 15 minutes sort of average response time, which we feel is possibly a little bit confusing. And actually, if we're to supply a contract with the public, I think the public, where you live, would like to know what that service really looks like. So that is a key part of our consultation. with the public, i.e. does this make sense? Do they like to know that where they live, what service they can expect in response element? And also, what do they constitute as an emergency? So that's the first major, the first part of our key 5 areas that we're looking to develop. The second one is a resource deployment review, where at present we use resources in an agile way. Telford Central, the second whole-time appliance at Telford, goes to Tweedale and it tracks the risk effectively. So at night time, when Telford Centre loses an awful lot of its life risk, Tweedale in the south, the suburb, has obviously a far greater life risk from sort of evening through to the early hours of the morning. And as such, we have the agility to move an appliance to shadow that risk. I think that's resourcing to the risk in the most agile way. We intend to consult and review whether we can use other assets more agilely. So as developments, for example, the development of Buildworth, Tweedale, West Shrewsbury, areas of Oswestry, as our county is evolving and the infrastructure is being developed, then we need to have the agility to look at what resources we can use differently to support this. The resource deployment review also takes into consideration the size of appliances, whether it's narrow access, special capability vehicles. So it's not restricted or limited in any way. The idea is it gives us the flex to be able to adapt to our changing risk as that evolves over the next 4 years initially and beyond that. We also look at the increasing our protection team. So a key aspect is keeping business in business. Following the learning as well from Grenfell Tower and also the comments and recommendations from the HMI audit of our fire service, we are responding by increasing the resources we have in protection to be able to carry out greater work in protection and potentially to meet changes of legislation that I'm sure are around the corner. We also have, again, to meet the changing risk, we're proposing to consult on changing our prevention in rural communities. Obviously, with COVID-19 and various other, it's been very difficult to maintain the traditional face-to-face visits with our most high-risk people. Obviously, people who are shielding, people of significant age, which are really our very high-risk people for fire. The last thing they really need is a crowd of firefighters knocking on the door, and coming into their property during this current period. So we want to look at more innovative ways of using technology to support those in the rural areas, especially those in the rural areas who may be 20 minutes, 25 minutes even from a fire station. So it's looking at what assistive technology and how we can do that. And obviously we want to engage with the rural community, those people there, to get their feel for that, for the use of technology, the blend with face-to-face, and how that will look in supporting them in the future. So again, it's a key aspect as we notice from our data that the ripple of our incidents is gradually moving ever so slightly away from the urban areas, and a higher percentage of our incidents are becoming in rural areas, which is obviously which puts pressure on our response times. So again, we're looking to meet that changing risk by changing and improving our prevention in rural areas. And then finally, we're looking at updating our service vision and aims. So having put in those various changes, the various ideas that we want to drive our service forward, then we looked at, actually, we are making Shropshire safer, as opposed, we needed a vision that evolved with us and kind of takes us on the journey to the next level. And with that, our aims. So our aims have changed, and I'll just go through them very quickly, but there are to be able to respond to emergencies in an appropriate time with a professional, competent, equipped team. Yes, to reduce the number of fires and impact in our community, to reduce the number of fire-related deaths and serious injuries, and to work with partners to reduce other relevant risks, to mitigate against harmful impacts on the environment, and to develop our culture to be more purposely diverse, inclusive, deliberately developmental, and intelligently innovative. And that's recognising what the HMI did, recognise that our people really are key in driving change and moving the service forward against some of the big challenges that are out there and the changing risk of our county. So that's the main story of the RMP. The report then details that we have a raft of business as usual, other departmental aims and objectives that are shown in the document. And these are really, these provide a real similarities to Hereford and Worcester as we become more and more close in our alliance working. So again, it will make it easier for us to measure our performance. We propose to have the same metrics that will mean transparency of service and hopefully make your job of scrutiny more easy. That's the actual IRMP itself. The consultation element commences in the first week of July, and members very kindly agreed to support it through use of social media, and potentially, if we have an opportunity to engage more directly with communities, then they'll be able to support us with that. But also in the engagement, we're looking at utilising as an alliance-based purchase, a company by the name of ORS, who specialise in focus group and consultation engagement. They will be producing for Shropshire, as well as Hereford and Worcester, 3 focus groups that at the moment are projected to be online. But if government guidance changes and it is the equality impact assessment supports it, then these may well become face-to-face meetings. However, that's a little bit further down the road. They're programmed for August, but there's a lot of engagement before that. So the social media aspect, we will have the opportunity really for the first time to target specific parts of our proposals to relevant communities. So again, the rural risk element, for example, engaging with parish councils, women's institutes, and actual young farmers, the rural communities. So it gives us a great opportunity to segment the RMP and actually to deliver it in total, but also target aspects of it to certain members of society. I have a copy, a couple of mock-ups really from the design that we're using at the moment, which I'm happy to share with you. Before I continue, I notice that Rod has got his hand up. Rod, would you like to come in there before I take over through the design element?
Guy, probably useful for them to see the design, actually. I've just got a couple of comments before members have the chance to ask questions, just to expand on exactly what the IRMP is, because we only do it every 4 or 5 years, so it's easily forgotten.
Absolutely. So what I'll do is I'll now go into the technology, deep into it, and share my screen with you. And this is a mock-up that's come through. The content hasn't been edited or proofed, so please don't take the content as finished article. It's not. But the design element, which incorporates our colours, I'd be really interested in your feedback as members on how it looks, how it reads, how it makes you feel. So really, really good early consultation. So I'm now going to share it with you, hopefully. Bear with me 2 seconds. Just make it a bit bigger. Right. Hopefully you can all see that. So what I'm just going to do is take it back, because it's a little bit farther forward. So this is a proposed design. So we're using a slight curve, but if you come into underneath the front page, you've got the header, obviously. The feature is that we have the corporate blue, the corporate colour, with a slight underscore of red to highlight that. The curve has been designed to give a warm and give a comforting feel to the reader, to promote inclusivity, to promote you to actually stay in the document. And again, we've got various infographics that will come in and support this. So again, we start off by asking people and tell exactly what we want them to do. So some RMPs will go off straight into about the risk and about what's happening and all the rest of it. But actually, this is a consultation. We need the public's help. So kind of tell them what you want to tell them first. So the idea is that we're asking the public for and being clear what we want them to do. So that's the purpose of the document. Obviously, we have a forward that you would expect from the Chief Officer and the Chair. Imagery, as you can see, the visuals are up to date. They incorporate, the sad flooding we had in February. And then we're off by using infographics and different coloured boxes to try and make it a more visual experience. I think it's very important that it's just the document you will have had as part of the report is effectively a Word document. This is taking it to the next level. So actually it becomes a public-facing document that can hold an audience on what is quite a long and can be a bit of a dry subject. So we go, as you can see, visuals again. We like to use, and hopefully you'll agree, the imagery, the photography that comes into shot, but we desperately try not to write over photography for ease of reading. And again, the design does take into account the actual basic requirements of being able to read a document rather than something that we just think looks good. So it's a blend, as you can see, of highlighted boxes and text, etc. Now we're getting to an area where we haven't gone further. So these are areas we're looking at adding more infographics in, more visuals, but I'm probably going to lose you if I go much further down the document than that. So that's just to give you a real feel. What I'm particularly interested in is what you think of the header, and actually how appealing that is to you as a visual rather than the actual word contents, etc.
If I might, Chair, just to round up.
Yes, thanks. I wanted to say something, but I'll leave it to you first, Rod, please.
Thanks, Chair. It's just a reminder, really, that, as I said, we only do this every 4 or 5 years. This is the highest level strategic document we use for running the service. What you might have been used to in the past, and certainly the last one, the one before that, even more so, would have been a very broad, bold change programme. Remembering, though, they were driven by financial savings more than risk. So in the olden days, if you like, then we were often trying to cut our coat to suit the cloth. As we've discussed earlier, we're adequately funded now, and what we're doing is looking to make sure that we use that funding to continue to drive down risk. So this plan is probably unlike some of the previous ones, that it's a plan for a plan. We haven't come forward with a load of swinging cuts. We've come forward with a number of areas that we will be looking at over the next 4 years to drive risk down. So in some of those, if they come in those areas such as the resources review, there may be a need for further public consultation if it identifies that there be anything significant to our changes in fire cover. But at the moment, you need to have that in the RMP to be able to develop it along with your staff and with the public. So that's why it looks like it's a softer sort of plan. It's a strategic document setting out the areas that we'll focus on and telling us how we're going to focus. The next thing to bear in mind is that it's a challenging document at the best of times, because while this is for public consultation, and effectively the first aim of an IRMP is to be your contract with the public. So it's the fire authority's contract with the public over the service that you will deliver them over the next 4 or 5 years. The second part of it, because it's all things to all people, a document like this, which is what makes it challenging to write. The second part is the contract between the fire authority and the fire service. So this is what you will hold me to account on, or whether I'm delivering against it. So that's why it's so important for it to be clear, and in some areas quite detailed. The third one, it's a measuring stick, really, for when HMIFRS come in and look at us. They need to have something to measure us by. And the first thing they will measure us by is whether we have prepared an adequate IRMP and whether we are delivering against it. So it needs to be very, very clear in that context. Then, of course, it's direction for our managers, and you've seen the detail in the second half of the document, and some of the strategic objectives, or all the strategic objectives. They make sure that the managers, we're making sure we're always pulling in the right direction. All our activity has to be about delivering those strategic objectives. And if it doesn't fit with one of those, my first question to the managers is, why are you doing it? And then the last one, it gives staff an understanding. It's the vision for staff. They understand where they're going. So, as I say, it's a complicated document, which is why it's so big. We'd love to have got it down to 6 pages, but that doesn't serve all those purposes. So with that, I'll stop talking, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Rod, and also that very, very well-reformed and well-documented presentation from Guy, because let's be honest, this is a document that HMICFRS hold dear. As they did in the last inspection, they frequently referred to what was in our IRMP, and this is how we're mainly judged on how we're successful or otherwise. And so this is an exceptionally important document, particularly in light of, as we've said earlier, change in the fire service and its going forward with different sort of aspects, particularly it looks at flooding and additional fire risk. So it's a very, very important document. This to me looks at first glance to be excellent. Obviously we've got to go into it in more detail, but with its value, somebody's got something I could hear in the background there, like a car going past. But no, it's a very important document, and also, as I agree what Guy said, it is important also that we relate this to the public, because the public will feed into us what they see as any risks, and particularly when we talked about the rural areas, and it's likely that we'll have more effect of people retiring to rural areas and putting additional demands on the service. So it is very, very important, and I look forward to the completed document, but I'd like to thank all participants so far. I'll now throw this open to anybody else that wants to make a comment.
Chair, Councillors Roberts and Minery have indicated they'd like to speak.
Okay. Keith?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, Guy, a really good document. Say first glances, it looks really good. Your colours are inviting. But I say I'll scrutinise it a bit more and see if I can come up with something. The most important thing I've come up with, and I read it twice the other night, and I know it's a minor thing, but it's there in black and white. Page 8 in the RMP plan. If you're ready to have a look at it. And UNESCO site.
Yeah.
Ponthill Aqueduct and Canal has never ever been in Shropshire. It was in Denbighshire and still is in Denbighshire. And I'm talking as a Welshman now, but I'm a South Walian. So I'm sorry, you've got to take that out, mate, because it's not and ever has been in Shropshire. So I'll leave it to you. It should not be there.
Thank you, Council. I will check my facts. Thanks, Council.
Yeah, I don't know where it's come from, but it's wrong.
Okay.
It's about 3 miles over the border. We go to the bottom of Chirk Bank. I can assure you that, because I worked in the control room at the police station for years. Our border is the bottom of Chirk Bank, nowhere near that aqueduct. So out it comes. But I'd just like to say thanks for your presentation. Really good. Really good document, and I like the colours. Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to David, then it's Paul Milner's indicated. So, David?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that I very much like the style and presentation of the document. Those of us who have been able to read emails from this morning will have had a taster of it. It looks really good, very inviting, gets the message across, and I heartily commend it to members to support that particular style. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, Paul?
I was just going to say, obviously, looking at the map, and obviously Shropshire is a very rural county, 90% of it's rural. I was just wondering, obviously, fire prevention is key to stop the fires, but is there any work ongoing at all, working with, like, you can actually tap in with Alexa or Google or whatever now into central heating, lights, plug sockets. into fire alarms? Is there anything like that going on which then can notify the resident or then back to the fire station? It's just fire prevention, I think, is key for such a rural county like Shropshire.
Guy, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor, there's a lot of work in that, and that's really why this this proposal of looking in the round at technological innovation to support rural fire prevention is a key proposal. At present, Shropshire Council are starting a pilot with, I believe, Samsung, looking at assistive technology in the home through adult social care, and these are areas that we're looking to sort of develop with them. So the actual the actual nuts and bolts about whether there is a detector that's doing this, I wouldn't be able to give you an answer at the moment, but that would definitely be part of the consideration of this project, this workflow. So I think the answer is yes, we will be looking at that, because these are the ways of preventing fires in a sparse county with the risk rippling away from the core. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments before I ask for? Well, David's already indicated he wants to propose, and I'll look for a seconder. Any other comments? In that case, David's proposed. Have we have a seconder?
Keith Roberts speaking. Would you like me to second it?
Yes, please.
There we are then. I've seconded it.
Right, then we'll go back to Lynn for a run through the membership.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Adams.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Blundell.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Carter.
4.
Thank you. Councillor D.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Hartin.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Lavery.
4.
Councillor Lavery. Thank
4.
you. Councillor Mellings.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Milner.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Miniry, you have proposed or seconded, I think.
Yes.
Councillor Pardy. Thank you.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
Yeah, as a seconder, 4.
Sorry, thank you. Councillor Wynne.
4.
Thank you. That's unanimous, Chair.
Well, thank you very much indeed. We'll move on to item 13, if we may. And I've got this down for Jed to present, if that's correct.
Yes, it is, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
This is a housekeeping paper, and it outlines the strategic planning process for the current year. So the appendix outlines the reports and documents that will be presented to members for approval, culminating in the production of next year's annual plan. And in addition, the 4-year service plan, which will come into effect. The service plan includes the IRMP as the central plank of the document. And in addition, it will include a 4-year action plan for the delivery of the IRMP and the service priorities going forward. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
Any questions at all there, members? Otherwise, I'll ask for a proposer and a seconder. No questions?
No questions, Chair. Councillor Adams has proposed.
And I'll second it if necessary, and then we'll go through the process again, Lynn.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so Councillor Adams proposed it. Councillor Blundell. Councillor Blundell.
Can't hear her.
I think she's having problems with muting today.
Okay.
Right. Councillor D.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Hartin.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Lavery.
4.
Councillor Mellings.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Milner.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Miniry.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Pardy.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
4.
Councillor Thompson.
4.
Thank you. And Councillor Wynne.
4.
Thank you. Unanimous again, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, we'll move on to the next items. There's two items together here, 14A, 14B, which you have to do.
I'm declaring interest. So how do I shut down?
Yeah, you have to leave, as does Kevin as well.
Chair, if I may, Councillor D's asking how. So do you mind if I just give some explanation?
No, you carry on. Yes,
please.
Councillor D, if you just hang up on the call like you would ordinarily with a telephone call with your red button, when it's time for you to return, then if you keep an eye on the meeting chat, Lynn, no.
Yeah, will do. Yeah,
Then Lynn will send you a message to let you know that you can return, and at that point, just click join on your calendar invite in the same way that you did to initially come into the meeting.
Thanks, love.
That's the same for Kevin as well, isn't it?
That's right. Yes.
Okay. Well, this has been to Jermaine.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Hi. So this report results from a routine review of the discretionary powers of the Fire Authority under the Firefighters Pension Scheme for 2015. So in 2002, 2010 and 2014, the Fire Authority agreed delegations and policies in relation to the Firefighters Pension Schemes for the 92 scheme and the 2006 scheme. And similarly, in 2015, delegations and policies were established. As the scheme manager, the Fire Authority are required to review these discretions at intervals to ensure that they remain appropriate. The appendix of the report lists the rules of the scheme where discretionary powers can be exercised. These were agreed in 2015 and then reviewed again in 2017. Both the pensions officer and I have recently reviewed the discretions again, and on this occasion there are no recommended changes. So members are asked to note the review of the delegation of powers under the Firefighters Pension Scheme for 2015, of which the items 1 to 52 remain unchanged. So that's that paper. Thank you.
Okay. So we have to take it. There's a lot of background noise from somewhere. Any questions?
Chair, we have no questions.
We'll go for a proposal in a second.
Councillor Minory's proposed and Councillor Harton has proposed that we note the report as well. So I think we can take that as a proposer and a seconder.
Okay, now we go through the usual process.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Adams?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Blundell?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Carter?
4.
Thank you. Councillor D? She's out the room, sorry. Councillor Harton has seconded. Councillor Lavery?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Mellings?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Milner?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Minory proposed. Councillor Pardy?
He's out the room.
He's out the room, sorry. Councillor Price?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
4.
Thank you. And Councillor Wynne?
4.
Thank you.
Right, then we'll move on to 14B, Jermaine.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this report informs the Fire Authority of the review of the employer discretion's statement of policy for the local government pension scheme. So under Regulation 60 of the LGPS 2013 regulations, each employer must keep under review and publish their policies on certain discretions contained within the LGPS regulations. The policy was last reviewed in 2017 following the advent of the new scheme in 2014. To meet the requirements of the 2013 regulations and to ensure good practice, the 2014 policy has been reviewed by myself and the pensions officer from Shropshire Council. The administration experience of the last 3 years was considered to inform the review, and it was agreed that no changes are needed. Therefore, it's proposed that members agree that the current policy stands unchanged. So if there's any questions on that paper, I'd like the Fire Authority, though, to note the review of the statement of policy this year and agree the appended statement of policy that it's valid.
Thank you very much for that. Sorry, I couldn't quite hear that. Any proposer, seconder?
Thank you. Chair, thank you. Councillor Minery has proposed, it's noted and agreed, and Councillor Mellings has seconded.
Fine, we'll go through the usual process now then.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Adams?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Blundell?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Carter?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Dees out the room. Councillor Hartin?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Lavery?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Mellings is seconded. Councillor Milner?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Minery proposed. Councillor Pardy?
He's out the room.
He's out the room. Sorry, Chair. I do apologise. Councillor Price?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
4.
Thank you. And Councillor Wynne?
4.
Thank you. That's that vote concluded, Chair. Thank you.
We invite the 2 members back
I'll
in.
let, yes, I shall do.
Yeah.
Yes. Just bear with me a second.
Okay.
Okay, that's a message gone. Right.
No. Where are you?
I'm here.
Kevin?
I'm back.
Yeah.
Kev? Oh,
Yeah.
yes, there we go. Back
Yeah.
in. Thank you, Chair. We can carry on now.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, we'll move on to item 15. If you're there, now we'll pass on to Dave Myers to present this, please.
Thank you, Chair. So item 15 is the scheme for payment of members' allowances 2020 to 21. Some background for members. In 2003, the local authorities regulations came into force, which require fire authorities to establish their own schemes of allowances. In 2003, Shropshire Wrekin Fire Authority agreed its first scheme of payment for members' allowances, and since then have agreed a scheme each year as per the regulations. The regulations also recommend that each scheme is reviewed every 4 years by an independent panel. And under the regulations, the authority, when making its scheme, must have regard to recommendations made by the independent remuneration panel of its constituent authorities. In 2009, Telford and Wrekin Council's independent remuneration panel conducted a review where it made recommendations to allowances and a number of special responsibility allowances. Shropshire Council's independent remuneration panel undertook a review in 2016 when the authority agreed not to take the panel's recommendations in any areas, maintaining the allowance structure already in place. Following the Fire Authority's restructure from 17 members to 15 and some changes in delegations and committee structures, the duration since the last scheme, it was felt that it was appropriate time to have a review and utilise Telford and Wrekin Council's independent member remuneration panel. There's been no review since 2016, and in essence, there's been no increase in members' allowances since 2010, as the last recommendations were not taken by the authority. The independent remuneration panel from Telford and Wrekin Council consists of a range of professionals from a range of sectors. They collect data from similar sized fire authorities, which are shown at Appendix A of the report, and make comparisons to similar sized authorities across each of the functions, roles and responsibilities, and concluded that this authority's allowances generally fell below the average of the group. They recommended an uplift across each of the roles. The uplift was calculated against the value of allowances in 2009 and current allowance values. The remuneration panel found that the increased allowances was still below the upper quartile of the comparative group, but realistically reflected the increase in responsibility of the roles and expectation of member engagement and activity in a leaner structure. A relative increase for both the chair and the vice chair is proposed, and there's a recommendation to establish a new allowance for the chairperson of each committee in recognition of the additional responsibilities of these committees. The independent panel also reviewed the travel and subsistence allowances, noting that members had not requested any increase since 2009. And with regard to those travel and subsistence allowances, it was proposed that the allowances would align to the local authority travel subsistence schedules, which would be consistent with members claiming expenses in accordance with their own local authority. I would at this point like to bring attention to members the Appendix B, as there were some questions raised from the initial remuneration panel report, which were asked for clarification. And within that, there is still a discrepancy around the number of members which sit upon the Liberal Democrat Party, and we would like perhaps the monitoring officer to give us some clarity around those numbers to ensure that we have consistency in the way that we award the allowances. I'm happy to take any other questions, but as I say, I would like some advice from the monitoring officer on those allowance levels, please.
Chair, would you like me to?
Comment? Yes, please.
Yes. So members, Appendix B on page 198 of your report pack, you will note that it makes reference to an allowance for the leader of the Lib Dem and Independent group, and makes reference to that group being a number made up of 3. Members will know that that group's actually made up of 4 members, and that's equivalent to the Labour group. So there's an inequality between the recommendations for the leader of the Labour group and the leader of the Lib Dem and Independent group. Whilst the authority needs to consider the recommendations of the independent remuneration panel, it is open to members to do something different to what is recommended in that report. And if members wanted to balance out that inequality, it may be the case that members would like to consider moving an amendment to the recommendations so that opposition groups with 3 members, the leader will receive an allowance of 1,635, which is in accordance with the report, and opposition members of 4 and more, they receive an allowance of 3,290, which then makes the 2 current minority groups equivalent. If that's adopted, then it would have the effect of increasing the total cost of the scheme by £1,655 per year. It is open to members to adopt the recommendations in the report, to consider an amendment in along the lines of that I've suggested, or to do something different. But if you did want to make a change to the recommendations, then somebody would need to move and an amendment which would need to be seconded and then debated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. It does seem obvious that if you have got 2 different political groups of equal standing of 4 and 4, it is probably incorrect to give one level and one another. And I would ask that perhaps we reconsider this and ask an item C, A, B and C added as an amendment to put this into practice if people feel that that is what they want to do. Any comments?
Well, Chair, yes, I have raised my hand as the leader of the Lib Dem Independent group. The suggestion that's been raised by the monitoring officer seems a reasonable one. I'd be happy to support that.
Any other members want to comment? I will take the vote if necessary. No other comment? Lynn, do we need to take a vote on this particular one? Kevin? Kevin put his hand up.
Could somebody cleverer than I?
Sorry,
rise it on.
Can't hear those noise. Kevin?
You're muted, Kevin.
Let's try again. Could somebody cleverer than I just give an estimate of the percentage rises in this?
You want to come back on that?
I'm really sorry if that was aimed at me. I'm really struggling to hear because of the feedback.
Right. Well, it was recommended by Nigel, and it's been accepted, I think. But what it was asking for was the total, the difference in the detail. I think it was just over £1,000, wasn't it, to add to the cost? Because currently, I think for doing this, it's only going to cost the authority about £780 in total. So this would add potentially £1,000 to it, roughly, so as I'm aware.
£1,655 additional.
1655.
That's 1,645, I think, is the total amount.
Okay, well,
yeah.
So are we in a position now, Anthea, to do a vote on this, to add it to the recommendations at A and B and add this as a C?
Chair, you would need to just move an amendment to recommendation B that's subject to the suggestion that I've put forward. You adopt the IRP recommendations.
Okay. Well,
but I believe that's been moved by you and seconded by Councillor Harton. So unless anybody has any comments, you can move to the vote on that basis.
Okay. Well, we'll vote on. Can we vote on the basis of A and B?
Chair, I've asked a question in the chat.
I'm sorry, I can't see anything notified here. Who's this? Is this?
Sorry, it's Tracy. Tracy Ansliz.
Okay, Tracy. You carry on.
Thank you. Sorry. It was just to say, when the size of the authority went down by 2, I think it took the total allowances down to something like 63,000. So does by doing this take out that saving now, because it puts it back up into the 70-odd thousand, which is roughly where it was before? Is that correct? I don't know if somebody from finance could just confirm that for me.
Are you there, Joe?
I am. I don't have that information to hand, but I can certainly get it ready after the meeting and share it following the meeting, if that's acceptable.
What I would say, yes. Tracy. What I would say, Tracy.
Sorry, Claire, I was going to say, I think it's in here actually, because I just wanted to check I was reading it properly, because it says it was 70 and it went down to 63, and I was just checking it now. It goes back up to 71 in total, does it? The total cost of this would now be 71. That was what I was asking, really, Joe. Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Sorry.
Sorry, okay. Chair, can I just add to that?
Yes, John.
Chair, this is Dave Myers.
Myers, sorry.
So just to answer to Tracy's question, yes, that is absolutely correct. However, we must take into account that there's been no increase in the allowances over 10 years, and were the authority not to have changed, there would still be an increase in the overall cost of the authority. But of course, the increase is smaller now because it is a smaller number of members.
Yeah, and it is an independent panel that suggested this as well. Did I see Kevin putting his hand in the air there?
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chair. I just want to say a quick thing. Add on to this is that the report says that we.
Oh, you disappeared.
Councillor Party.
We're one of the lower authority members groups that, as far as remuneration is concerned, allowances, and I've heard people saying that we do this only for the money, and I've heard that on BBC Shropshire, and I think this proves that we do not only do this for the money.
Very much so. Very much so. Very, very well said. And sorry.
Sorry, Chair, just around the, it's one of the lower ones. Does anybody know what Worcestershire's is? Is it about 1,116 or something like that for an allowance?
I don't know.
And just as you were in an alliance with them, that was all I was asking. Thanks.
The alliance doesn't really come into doesn't discuss the allowances as such. This is something separate, but from the finance aspect. But it's minimal in terms of its impact on our overall budget for sure. And as I say, it's at least 10 years since we had any uplift. So I think it's an independent panel that suggested it.
Chair, it's Keith Roberts here. If the Assistant Police Commissioner looks at the report on Appendix A, it will give her the answer.
Right. Yeah, there's a full report there which discloses and also shows the allowances across the country. David's indicated as well, I see, David Minery. Do you want to come in, David?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just going to reflect that the overall cost of this is hardly any different to what it was back in 2009, and it's considerably less than the cost of running the police authority.
Very, very true. So do we now go to the vote on this and vote for A and B with the amendment, Lynn?
Chair. Anthea, is that correct? Sorry.
Yes, if there's no more comments or debate, then you can move to the vote, Chair.
Okay, we have
only one.
Sorry?
Sorry, Chair, I keep doing that. Only one final comment. So I would agree with the last speaker that the police authority was expensive.
Thank you.
So I think there was a big...
I never said that it was expensive. I simply said that it cost more than the fire authority.
Okay.
I think if we want an honest debate about allowances, I think if you look at the PCC's annual accounts for the latest available year, there was a substantial rise in one particular allowance of about 20-odd%.
That was Chris.
It's Chris Mellings, and that's in the public domain.
Yes. Yeah. Fine. Well, I think we've had a chat about this, and I think we've come to an agreement that we do agree the uplift in the Liberal Democrat group. So I think, can we move now to the vote? We have a proposal and a seconder, Lynn, as far as I'm aware.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Chair, can I just confirm who's proposed and seconded? Sorry, it was
Nigel who was proposing.
Nigel proposed.
Do we have a seconder?
Go on, I'll second it.
Peter Adams.
Okay, I'll take Peter as the seconder.
Okay, let's go to the vote then.
Right, Councillor Blundell. 4. Was that 4? Sorry. 4. Thank you. Councillor Carter.
4.
Thank you. Councillor D. 4. Thank you. Councillor Lavery.
Oh, the background noise somewhere. That's better.
Councillor Mellings.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Milner.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Minery.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Pardy.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
4.
Thank you. And Councillor Wynne.
4.
Thank you. That's unanimous, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, members. Right, we'll move on to item 16 now. And this is from Simon. This is the service response to COVID-19, which obviously is a very important report. Simon.
Many thanks, Chair. Thank you, everyone. So the purpose of this report is to provide members with an overview and awareness of the planning measures put into place to date within Shropshire Fire and Rescue Service. And the measures are to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19 to enable us to continue to deliver our services and also assist partners to support vulnerable individuals within our communities. So it's a two-part report to give you assurance around our planning and how we're dealing with COVID internally, but also how we're looking to assist partners locally, regionally and on a national level. So members are asked to note the contents of the report and acknowledge the ongoing work associated with COVID-19. Within the report, there's some background information on pages 1 and 2, but I'm not proposing that I cover too much ground there because it is freely available and has been gained from local and national media sources. So I'd like to take it to page 3, if I can, section 4, which starts to talk about Shropshire Fire and Rescue Services response. So since notification and awareness of the pandemic, Shropshire Fire and Rescue have undertaken significant work, as you can imagine, to ensure we're best positioned to continue to deliver our services and support partners to mitigate the effects of COVID. Our starting point with this was to gain intelligence from health partners, because it was a very health-led issue to start with, and we've actively engaged in tactical and strategic coordination groups. This has worked as a two-way measure, so we've gained intelligence into the service, but we've also been able to articulate what support and what capabilities we've got within service that can be used by partners to support the response. Our initial planning assumptions as well, I think, is a key area, just to give you an indication of the levels that we were working at. So the initial planning assumptions indicated that we should be planning for absence rates of 20% in the peak of the pandemic and 80% throughout the entire period. So just to put this into numbers for you, what we were working with in those planning assumptions was 100 members of staff being off at the same time during the peak, and up to 400 being absent throughout the period or the pandemic itself. So you can see it was significant impact that we were potentially going to face moving forward. So section 4 goes on to explain some of the measures that we put into place to continue to deliver both areas of service delivery and service support. These include things such as operational resilience plans, flexible models with regards to operational cover, and also there's some mitigation in there as well, where we started looking at some activities that we could reduce our involvement or suspend, so we weren't creating an infection risk amongst our staff, which would ultimately impact on appliances being off the run. So moving on to page 4 and section 5, I'd like to give you a bit of an indication around current performance. And when this report was put together, it was towards the back end of May. So I've got an update to that position as well. So throughout the pandemic, the service have monitored absence rates and also shared information with National Fire Chiefs Council on a daily basis, and also the Local Resilience Forum, which is working with our police, ambulance, local authority and wider strategic partners. So the graph on that page shows our absence rate within service. So the highest absence we experienced was 7.2%. At the time of writing this report, I'm pleased to say that our absence rate had fell to 2.1% COVID-related absence. Further updates, I can give you the figures as of today, just to give you further assurance around the measures that we've put in place as a service and how we've complied with national guidance. We've seen a continued reduction, I'm pleased to say, and our absence rate as of today due to COVID is 0.7%. So to put that into perspective, that equates to 4 individuals within the service. Those 4 individuals are self-isolating as opposed to showing signs and symptoms as well, and that could be for a number of reasons. That could be caring for dependents, that could be because of an individual vulnerability such as shielding, etc. So I'm really pleased to say that we've got an extremely low absence rate due to COVID. But not only the absence rate due to COVID, we're currently experiencing a 3.3% absence rate in total, which is lower than our normal absence rate. So this could also suggest that the measures we've put in place as a service and the government guidance, the lockdown measures, if we want to refer to it that, are also preventing our staff suffering other illnesses. Maybe that's seasonal flu, etc., that we'd expect to see. So our overall absence levels are coming down. So we're looking at links to understand that a bit more. But I just thought it was worth mentioning with yourselves. So there's several factors as well. Other factors. Shropshire has a lower rate of infection when compared to urban areas, such as the wider West Midlands region, and that will obviously transpire into our absence rates. Further factors as well. is good compliance that we need to consider in terms of following that government advice around social distancing, hygiene, and also the lockdown measures that we're now seeing released or eased. It'd also be reasonable to state that the measure outlined within Section 4 that we've just looked at has proved effective. So that was some of the measures that we put in really early doors around operational resilience planning and limiting movements of staff, etc. So moving on to Section 6, page 5 of the report. This was probably the area that I wanted to make yourselves aware of and note, was the work that we could almost class it as additional activity, or the support we've offered to partners. So we've engaged with a wide range of partners throughout the response, and as I've said previously, this has been through our tactical coordination groups and also the strategic coordination groups. And it's allowed us to develop a detailed understanding of the wider impacts of COVID on partners. So the health sector is a great example of that. It's also allowed us to identify where our capacity and capabilities can assist partners within the region to mitigate the effects. So just to give you an indication of some of the offers that we've made to partners, this has included offers of support to local charities to undertake face fit testing for masks, protective masks, to prevent spread of the disease. We've offered to support health partners with fire safety advice. In the initial stages, you may recall they were looking at our health partners were looking to repurpose buildings in terms of hotels potentially turning into nurses' accommodation, or extending wards like we saw with the Nightingale situation within Birmingham and London, etc. So fire safety have been on hand to assist health partners to ensure we still maintain fire safety within those environments. We've also offered through our trauma risk management practitioners who deal with the psychological impacts of traumatic events. So that's it's a service that we offer through our officer group within the service, and that we deal with that internally through speaking to crews after traumatic events. We've actually offered that to a range of partners through the working arrangements under COVID as well. So actual activity we've undertaken, so those are the offers we've made. We've worked locally and nationally, and I think this is a real key point, to influence and amend data sharing agreements with NHS England and NHS Improvement, and that's allowed us to share data with local authorities both in Telford and Wrekin and Shropshire. And the reason for the data sharing has been to assist vulnerable members of our community. We've got access to something called Exeter Data, which identifies individuals over 65 years of age with underlying health conditions. Obviously, when we're working with our partners, this is really valuable in terms of picking up on Guy's point around IRMP. A lot of the vulnerabilities from fire can be transposed across to COVID vulnerabilities as well. So that was a real positive piece of work. We've allocated a dedicated resource, which was an officer to assist military planners, and that was to deal with logistics and management around excess death planning. Thankfully, we haven't had to call upon that, but we have been involved in the logistics and the planning of that, again, through our tactical coordination groups. We've also assisted with delivery of personal protective equipment for primary and social care settings from a central storage point, which is Hindlip, into the county. So that has been a strategic point at Shire Hall and one at Oaken Gates Leisure Centre in Telford as well. Our staff have carried out those deliveries of important emergency PPE, and to date we've carried out 25 PPE drops or deliveries to those places to assist with the movement of PPE. An update to that as well that has taken place in the last week since time of writing the report. We've also carried out face fit testing for masks and protection for both Princess Royal and Royal Shrewsbury hospitals to assist with ensuring their staff have correct masks as part of their PPE provision. And we're also moving into care home settings now, again, coordinating that work through our tactical coordination groups. So I just wanted to probably highlight those points. It's really pleasing to see how we're undertaking additional activity to meet the needs of our communities. So moving through to section 7 on page 6, what are the next steps for the service? obviously, we're keeping a real close eye on national guidance. We saw the easing of lockdown measures yesterday, so we're understanding what that means to us as a service and how we can start to restore our services that we took offline initially to prevent the spread of COVID. We're working to three main objectives. These are to make our workplaces safe, to restore full services in a restricted environment. So that's bringing online all our services in terms of prevention, protection and response, but understanding that we're still working within that restricted environment. And I think the 1 metre plus, the 2 metre, the social distancing, etc., are good examples of that restricted environment that's making us think about delivering our services in an alternative manner. So the next steps for us in restoring those services is to prioritise, and we've done that over the last few weeks, and we're looking to restore the services that pose the most significant risks. Some of these are maintaining competence within our workforce and ensuring succession planning and recruitment processes are delivered to maintain appliance availability and safe systems of work for our workforce. And I think it also is worth mentioning that we are capturing the learning from this event, and we'll continue to identify learning as part of our normal debrief processes to identify and inform our methods of operating as we move forward. Happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I will make a comment, but first of all, I've got two people I think I can see indicating. One was, I think, yes, it was Paul and then Nigel, I think.
Chair, Councillor Adams as well would like to.
Councillor, it says one other. He didn't say who it was.
I've got Councillor Adams, Councillor Milner, and Councillor Hartin.
Well, Paul indicated first, Paul Milner. So then I'll pass to him, and then Nigel, and then Peter.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for the report. I just got a couple of questions. One is how often, or if you had to test personnel, how long does it take that test to come back? That's one. The other one really is that if a member decides to actually go on holiday and the lockdown is still 2 weeks, what are you advising there? Are you automatically giving them 2 weeks off, or will they go on the sick for 2 weeks, or how would that affect your cover really? And the other one, do you think the number of incidents are lower due to less vehicles on the road? That could have been over the last 3 months, obviously less cars on the road.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Thanks for those questions. So I'll take them in turn, and please forgive me if I miss any detail. Just prompt me to fill the detail in. So test times, we've as of last week, we'd sent 13 members of staff for testing because they were showing signs and symptoms. We've had a variance in the test times, if I'm honest, in terms of turnaround times for those tests coming back. Some of which have been within 48 hours, and some of which have been up to 5 days. I think it was part of the when we had the delays. I think it was fair to say it was not long after the systems had gone live, and there was a bedding in period between what the national testing centres, regional and local, and what the implications were for reporting the testing. So between 48 hours and 5 days have been our turnaround times for testing. Quarantine obviously is a concern for the service in terms of appliance availability and availability of staff. The NJC have provided some guidance around this, and part of that guidance looks at staff will, if staff choose voluntarily to take a foreign holiday, and the advice remains of the 14-day quarantine. Our position at the minute is the individual, if they're able to work from home, i.e. our support services member of staff, and they're not displaying any signs and symptoms, then we'd enable that, because that is part of what we're promoting at the minute, because working from home is still part of that government guidance. If it's a uniform member of staff and their role doesn't allow them to work from home, we are encouraging that individual to come forward and discuss it with us on a case-by-case basis. Our intelligence over the last week, because we have engaged with all the whole time and on-call stations, is telling us we've got a very low number of staff that are planning to take a foreign holiday. The guidance is very much around we'll give people the opportunity to move leave, be that paid or unpaid leave, or we'll discuss each individual case by case, because the numbers are so low in terms of people with CL balances or time off in lieu balances and leave swaps and shift swaps. There's quite a bit of detail behind it, hence why we want to do it on a case by case basis. So that's the quarantine element. And incidents, we did see a reduction in RTC incidents purely because of traffic numbers on the roads. What we did see during that period, though, and I think I raised this at standards audit and performance around the response times element, was we saw a rise in fires in the open in the early stages, and that was purely because people were storing rubbish because household recycling centres were closed. So we saw people burning the rubbish to get rid of it as opposed to taking it to a household recycling centre. We pushed lots of communications messages around that and the dangers that come with that, and thankfully we've seen a reduction in almost that incident trend. So moving forward, we will continue to monitor it, but we are aware that more vehicles. I'm sat in the office looking out the window now, and more vehicles are definitely on the road. So we will keep you informed through our performance monitoring around that, Councillor.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Simon.
Thank you. Nigel now, if I may.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Simon. This is a very good report, and it's very good to see some of the excellent work that's been going on over the last 2 or 3 months to help partners and so on, particularly the support that we're giving to charities like Health House Charity, and so that's excellent. And one of the things I wanted to, a couple of things, but one of the things I wanted to add to perhaps is something to follow on from what Paul said in relation to testing. I know you've mentioned that a number of people have displayed some of the symptoms that have been tested and so on. But what concerns me is that quite a large proportion, significant proportion of people actually don't show any symptoms at all, even though they might be carrying. And I'm just concerned about, particularly in relation to the public-facing firefighters and the public-facing staff that we have, whether or not it might be an idea, given that there are a certain percentage that will never have the high temperature and display the symptoms that might otherwise enable us to test them or prompt us to test them. Perhaps we should take a more proactive approach, particularly with those public-facing staff members, and ensure they're tested as well. If I leave it at that, I might something else I'd like to come back on in a second as well.
No, that's fine, Councillor, and probably to provide an update around testing in terms of where we are. So the testing that's been available to date has been very much around the point of contact testing. So when an individual is feeling unwell, that's when they've been undertaking the tests. Moving forward, we're looking to utilise the antibody testing, which has been prevalent across the media. And this will indicate whether an individual has got antibodies present because they've already been a victim of COVID, essentially. Lancashire FRS have actually carried out a trial of antibody testing with 300 members of their staff, and we're waiting to see what that looks like from a national perspective. Health Partners this week are bringing antibody testing online for hospital staff within the county. So we're keeping a close eye, and that's some of the work that we're doing through the tactical coordination group to tap into those resources where we can potentially gain access to antibody testing facilities. Probably worthy of note as well is the fact that the science behind COVID is still in its infancy. I think we're all aware of that. And in terms of what antibody testing is actually telling us at the minute, it will tell us that an individual has got antibodies because they've been exposed to the virus. What the science isn't telling us at the minute is whether that gives us a period of immunity, be that 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. So we need the science. So the antibody tests at the minute are being used locally, regionally and nationally to inform and be used as a data set as opposed to confirmation of immunity, because that's where the science needs to catch up. But absolutely taking your point on board, Councillor, in terms of antibodies, and we are working towards that with partners.
Thank you, Simon. That's very helpful. My other question was in relation to moving forward. Now we're starting to have a relaxation of some of the measures, etc. And I know you've outlined the work that you're undertaking to start doing that. I would just want some reassurance, really, that should there be, and hope there isn't, should there be some kind of second wave, for instance, we're not going too far down the line that we can't immediately roll back.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So in terms of our restoration of services, it is very much a phased approach, and to give you an indication and assurance around how we're approaching the restoration of services, I've actually participated in 5 meetings this week with all whole time watches and on-call stations to discuss a move back towards our normal service provision or our normal operating model, and we've taken into account all the concerns that the crews and members of our teams may have, and the operations and the area command team are looking at that to understand how we can potentially allay some of those fears and concerns, and it will be a very staged approach. One of the things we are considering as well, and that we've done all the way through this pandemic, is try and align our approach to that of government. So when we went into lockdown, we introduced some quite severe measures in terms of to prevent that. When we're now coming to bring the services back online, it will be very much phased alongside the government advice as well. But just to provide the assurance that we are looking to do it in a phased approach, and probably bringing us back to our main objective is are our places of work safe, and that includes operations as well around that, Councillor.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, thanks, Sam.
Peter now.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I start, I want to say, given the figures you've just given us, I want to say congratulations and thank you for a sensational set of figures. Not good, not very good, but tremendous. And I think we need to thank everyone in the Fire and Rescue Authority, from Rod, for every level down, including yourself. Don't exclude yourself, right down to the very, very lowest level, because to get those figures, everyone must have put their 2 pence in. And I think it's time that these people got the recognition. If this was normal times, I would be proposing a change to recommendations in that we should have a party, you see. But these are not the normal times. But on Saturday, I'm seeing our MP, and I will present your figures to him to say, this is what Shropshire does, why can't the others do it, basically. Now, and I would expect him, and I will be telling him, I want him to take this to 2 people, Boris and the Chancellor, for 2 reasons. 1, it shows what can be done, and 2, if your figures are right and you've done all this, it'll show the Chancellor how it can reduce costs around the country, and I can't see that they will say no to that. So as a Conservative, and forget everyone else, I would say what you need to do is produce a short report on how you did it, and I will try and get Boris to buy it from you so that next year's income is guaranteed through this. I mean, I think it is that good. 0.7% of absence due to the virus is tremendous, and the fact that you've got the 0.7% there, but your normal absence is only just over 3%. Well, if you took your 7% out, you'd be below 3%. You'd be in the 2%. I think that shows that whatever's going on in the Shropshire Fire Authority is actually working, and it's not just working, it's working well. And it must be that all the grades and all the levels have confidence in whatever levels they look up to or down to. And I think that everyone should take a pat on the back. And if you tell me that you can produce this report, I will try and get it presented to government. So 1, you may get something out of it financially, but 2, whatever else, you will get something out of it reputationally, and that I think is just as important. And with that, I want to thank everyone within the Fire Authority for what they've done in the last 3 months.
Thank you, Councillor. I've just seen the Chief's comments on the chat bar. We have got a meeting tomorrow with all the stations, so we'll ensure that those thank yous are passed on.
Could I just say, to round this up, thank you, Peter. You did cover some of the things I was going to say, but that's always happened when you come at the end. But certainly it makes me very proud to represent this authority, and knowing that we're always at the forefront of any activity that we undertake. And this proves, again, that we know what we're doing, we do it properly, and we look after the safety and we safeguard our firefighters and the general public, and it's something should we all be very, very proud of. So please, Simon, thank everyone on our behalf because of the tremendous job everybody's done. Thank you. I'm going to turn now to a proposer and a seconder that this report be accepted. Proposer?
Chair, I proposed it. Keith Roberts.
Keith Roberts?
Yeah, can I
second?
Sorry.
Yeah, can I just comment? Can I just say, could we not get it to the press that the Fire Authority are congratulating, not just so that they, that the public know exactly what Peter has said.
Yes, I'll speak to liaise with the chief and Lynn, and we'll get something out.
Yeah, because you don't often get the praise coming from the supposed body.
Okay, we'll do that.
I'll second.
I've got a second for Keith. Can we have we had a proposal and a seconder now, haven't we?
Yes, Chair.
And we go to the voting process, Lynn.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Adams.
You're mute.
Lost his voice.
He's muted.
Councillor Adams, you're mute.
I think he did say 4 softly.
He's still going out.
Councillor Adams, we can't hear you. You need to unmute.
Sorry, I've unmuted 4 times. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I think after what I've said, I better vote.
You're say 4.
Thank you. Councillor Blundell.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Carter.
4.
Councillor D.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Hartin.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Lavery.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Mellings.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Milner.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Minery, I think I might have left the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Pardy.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts, you proposed. Councillor Thompson.
4.
Thank you. And Councillor Wynne.
4.
Thank you very much. That's agreed.
Thank you for that. We'll move on quickly to item 17, and this is for Guy to report on collaborative and partnership working.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is the annual report on collaborative and partnership working. And key to our making Shropshire safer is doing it with our partners and the community. This report starts a little bit differently, and we go into, on page 2, just explaining really collaboration, what we're trying to achieve. There's a lot of sometimes a bit of misunderstanding about actually what collaboration is and what partnership is. But I think it's key to know, and we really spell it out, that it's a process where we exchange information, we alter activities, and we share resources to enhance each other's capacity for mutual benefit. And we share risks, responsibilities, and rewards. So we acknowledge in collaboration that we have to invest a bit to reap the benefits, and we have to invest in our partners. And I think that's quite applicable to our partnerships, especially that fall from such collaboration, but also our work in the Alliance, where we are a sovereign organisation, but we do commit resources and we do commit energy and effort to achieve mutual goals. But I'll come on to that as we move through. On page 3, we have started off with a very high-level overview of the Fire Alliance collaboration, which is the first time we've included it in this report because it is a collaboration rather than a standalone item. But what I'll do, there's an appendice attached. So if you don't mind, I'll visit the Alliance and a progress report as part of the appendice. So I'll work through the report first, if that's okay with members. Prevention and protection, absolutely key. From what I spoke to previously on the IRM, that blend of resourcing, how we stop things from occurring in the first place, is so important to what we do. We've developed new partnerships and we've developed existing partnerships, some across the Alliance, things, for example, like MATES, which is effectively a protection-based team that works with the borders, the West Mercia Police, local authorities, and it really does focus on buildings of high risk and the people, often people who are into forced slavery, very unfortunate circumstances. It really focuses on their safety. So again, it's a broadening of our role, but actually it really, really works where we're not sort of working independently and, you know, disrupting other investigations from our professional partners. And again, it's something that's done in Hereford and Worcester and works brilliantly with West Mercia Police, very much the lead on that. We have always had very close ties with Telford and Wrekin Council, and we're really lucky to develop the real, I think it may even be the first one in the country, where the care package provision was linked to our Safe and Well process. So due to the sort of foresight of Telford and Wrekin and our prevention manager, Rupinder Dharmi, we were able to link up with the council to ensure that when people are assessed for care packages, that actually this is an opt-out of a Safe and Well intervention from Shropshire Fire and Rescue Service. So groundbreaking stuff. We want to build on that partnership, and actually we are in the process of waiting on Shropshire Council for a sign-off on a very similar project. That's just, I think, been held up due to some GDPR and the new liquid logic system, I think, that was implemented at Shropshire Council. So members from Shropshire Council, you're more than welcome to sort of ask the question and chivvy it along for us. But it's such an important partnership because it really does reach people of high risk in our community. We've been lucky, officers have worked in developing a new NHS Falls and Frailty Partnership, which actually gives the NHS access to some of our stations to deliver falls and injury workshops for frailer older people. Now that will have unfortunately stopped at the moment due to the COVID, but I'm sure that will be picked up again and energised as we move forward. So again, it's a great example of engagement in the community, and also it's county-wide, so it's not just a specific location. Simon mentioned before Exeter Data, which is a data set which is huge. It's nationwide, but it really does provide general practitioners data sets. It gives us a great handle on where age, people living alone, some of our most high-risk individuals live. It gives us a chance to automate workflows so we can approach those people and offer them safe and well. So it's a huge part of what we do and a great partnership that was developed at a national level. There are several other partnerships, but I'll move on rather than read the entire document to you. We still support young carers. This was formerly the British Red Cross. Unfortunately, that ceased, but this is now done through a different body, and these young people are under enormous pressure. I can only imagine what pressure they've been under recently, where they're looking after adults with complex health issues. So any support that we can provide those, I think, is truly welcome. We have still active members in the partnerships for domestic abuse, which includes the Sanctuary Scheme and MARAC, and this really also helps us identify and support with targeted hardening. So this is going out to very high risk locations and providing basic level of security with our police colleagues to effectively keep these people safe from the risk of attack. Again, very serious work. On an operational footing, we've got some partnerships which have developed, and 4 years ago our numbers and our involvement were very, very different. So we're supporting West Midlands Ambulance Service and Police in gaining entry into properties to assist with medical intervention. So where the person is down and there's no way of getting into that property, we have resources around the county that can first respond and gain access for the medical experts to provide the care that's needed. And we've carried out 127 of those to the year ended March 2020. And again, this is reflected in the RMP. And also missing persons searches, supporting, our partners with West Mercia Police and also voluntary sectors in searching for high-risk missing people. Shropshire, this is in rural as well as the urban areas, and as you appreciate, we do have some significantly sparse areas. So our boots on the ground and our assessment of risk, our use of drones and thermal imagery is a real benefit. We've had an incident command vehicle procurement, but I'll touch on that a little bit later. So we have a wide blend of partnerships. We're also very busy from the team in equality and diversity. We recognise this is an area that we need to develop, and as such, we are working with some energy to really embed an inclusive culture where we have a broad church of people's voices and opinions that's reflected in our decision making. So if I take you forward to the appendice, which goes basically looks at the Fire Alliance collaboration, and four key areas fell out of the alliance, which we really saw as the big enablers. These are the foundations: fire control, integrated risk management planning, information communication technology (ICT), and procurement. And the alliance felt that if you get these four projects, if you get them moving forward, if you start developing them, then a whole raft of other projects will naturally flow from it. For things like fire investigation, ops policy. There's a whole raft of things that are going on behind the scenes, but naturally fall from integrating these four key areas. So very briefly, fire control it's complicated, as most large projects are. We've proceeded through where an officer has worked for both services, developing and looking at what we currently have, and then looking at what we need in the future. And this really is, if you think of the impact of Grenfell Tower, the learning about the control room, London Fire Brigade, the capacity, the volume of information that was coming into that hub at that particular time, and you're probably talking the largest control facility in the UK, reflecting on our ability to manage a significant incident, a spate incident over a period of weeks. And then again, things with joint control learning from the events of the Manchester Evening News arena bomb attack. So there's been a lot of learning, a lot to get your head round, and actually making sure that as we move forward, we are future-proofing and providing the service that the HMI and the public and the various inquiries are quite rightly demanding of us. So at the moment, we have an options appraisal that's really got down to four realistic options, which is to continue to operate as two independent control rooms, providing each other fallback resilience and overflow capacity, both on a single updated system, or pursue a more regional solution with both services partnering with a third party as such, consolidating resources to a single site, single building, and achieving resilience through a third party, and also operating as one control over two sites, possibly with a primary and secondary control room that provides mutual resilience and spate capacity. So those are the four areas that are really where this project can go. So the next part of the project will be to determine what our current capacity and capability is, and how it really does fit, as I said, in that post Grenfell Tower, post Manchester Evening News arena landscape. IRMP I won't labour too much on RMP because you've been fully RMP'd by me a little bit earlier. But actually, just things on the data analysis that we undertook together as Hereford and Worcester and Shropshire. As part of the alliance, we commissioned the same data firm to do the same data analysis, to look at our data, to work with it, to provide reports to both authorities, to provide a joint report. And we made, that is a saving in time, but it's more important, it's investing in our methodology. So it's investing that we are standardising and talking the same language and becoming more and more joined at the hip. So the integrated risk management plan has examples of working together and real benefit, but actually it's a much longer journey than that, and it will be, as I said, the backbone really of what we provide as services over the next 4 to 5 years. I should just touch on, as I said, the consultation and communication strategies for RMP are also being developed as an alliance-wide. So there is no radical difference in how Hereford and Worcester will be consulting and how we will. We'll be using focus groups, again, a different company, but the same company to provide that focus group support and utilising where our video platforms and social media to get our messages out. I notice, Eric, Chair, you've got your hand up. Do you want to come in, or would you like me to proceed?
That was basically to wind up something I have to say regarding particularly the alliance when you finish.
Sorry, Chair, I couldn't quite hear that.
I said what I did was indicate I wanted to say something at the end of the report, particularly specifically to do with the Fire Alliance. Right, sorry, Chair,
I'll proceed. If I move on to ICT, which is easier to say than Information and Communications Technology, we have a change manager who is developing how this provision will look across the Alliance. It's obviously it will underpin everything we do. ICT underpins what we're doing now, as well as how our fire engines mobilise and the telemetry that supports our breathing apparatus. So it's absolutely embedded in everything we do. An in-depth review of the current ICT provisions has been carried out, and both services, as I said, have appointed a joint change manager to basically drive this forward, and to an independent person to come in and take this project forward. At present, we're looking at agile technologies, cloud-based working, and these are part of a detailed plan and vision that's been presented to the Fire Alliance Delivery Board. It's recognised that this is difficult, but it will provide greater capacity and resilience. It also recognises that our resources are stretched. So, the retention of very gifted and talented staff in rural areas is always a challenge. So, again, it's looking at that capacity and resilience, which is the absolute rock of the Alliance, enhancing capacity and resilience. We've already got some early progress with looking at how the help desks for both organisations can work, looking at how the wide area network that supports ICT, how that can be developed across the Alliance. So there are some tangibles, but as I said, it's a journey, and it is hence why we have the change manager to drive that forward. Procurement, and the challenge of procurement is to get upstream of it really. So identifying where we can buy, where we can design, where we can look at where we link in the future. Even if the opportunity might not be here this second, is it likely to be coming in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years? So it's mapping, and the procurement strategy that's being developed by officers from both services looks at how we can embed this into both our services. So again, we're looking at how we can make it the norm that Alliance working is considered in pretty much everything we do. And if the opportunity isn't there, when that's likely to appear. So the actual report has some examples of joint procurement that have been very kindly provided by officers from both services. And it looks at things, provision of electric, evaluation of electric vehicles, And again, it's probably important to point that developing joint tender processes and joint specifications really does save time and it saves money. Even if that specification and tender process isn't used for another 3 or 4 years, the actual development of it, supported by the development of the ops policy, really means that we can map ahead. And actually, as we move forward, these procurement opportunities, they fall into place much more naturally. So there's other things in there where we've looked at vehicle technology, thermal imagery, gas monitors used in both services, and again, workwear. But we have a national framework which both organisations use. So again, we have to blend. It's not being an alliance purchase at all costs. There may be better value and better service delivery from acting independently or using a national framework. So procurement is very much minded of that. To give a real overhead strategic view of efficiencies and savings, again, it's quite difficult. For all the reasons mentioned there, the primary aim is capacity and resilience, to enhance our capacity and resilience as two fire and rescue services. But we have to realise that while we have people acting independently, researching things independently, procuring things independently, developing policies independently, then actually we're not realising maximum value. So as the projects and all the 4 aspects there have developed, then the duplication of effort is reducing, and that is very hard to put a value on. But in the future, we will obviously attempt to do that. A headline figure, £307,000 is an estimation of the sort of savings and efficiencies, and that's based on average price versus bid winning price. But that is based on projects that we did or we commenced before the actual alliance started. So this gives you an idea of where we come from. We have always worked with Hereford and Worcester. The alliance has just focused that. And finally, again, there's an example there of current work. The incident command units that have just rolled out, which have probably saved each service in the region of £186,000, is a tangible physical sign of the alliance, let alone the technology and the software that supports it that's being developed as an alliance project. But the actual bricks, the wheels and metal of those incident command units gives you a tangible sign of progress in the alliance. For me, I hope that gives you a picture of where the alliance is going. There is limited detail on, as I said, on efficiencies and savings, but we are trying to learn as an alliance. We're relatively fresh. We're trying to learn from other industries, other sectors that have gone into alliances, successfully and not so successfully. So we're trying to move this forward. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Rod. Did you indicate you wanted to say something?
Oh no.
I thought I saw your hand in the air. Rod?
Someone was unmuted then and said, "Oh no," with a groan, and I accept that and move on. I appreciate we need to move this meeting on.
Well, we do. We've been nearly 3 hours now, so Chris has indicated, but I would like to just say something myself prior to that. I didn't indicate earlier. This, obviously, to me, is one of the key factors going forward. And we have made representations to the public. We've done press releases as much as recently as one today, because we are doing what the government asks us to do, which is to collaborate with emergency services. And we are collaborating and have done for some time now with Hereford and Worcester. And we are being very successful in what we're doing. And this is the future. We do not want outside interference. We can work very, very closely with Hereford and Worcester, as we are doing, and we will make further savings going forward, and we will collaborate wherever necessary. But that's something I'm very, very keen to develop along with the other members of this authority. I've just been recently elected as the chair in May of this. It was Roger Phillips for the last year. Now it's me taking over, and my colleague Chris Mellins is working alongside me. So we have the ability to make sure that this alliance moves forward, and Shropshire and Wrekin Fire Authority does get benefits from it. Chris, I'll pass to yourself now, if I may.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair, and I endorse entirely what you've said. And one of the benefits, if there is such a thing, of the current crisis is that we've been able to work a lot closer with our counterparts in Hereford and Worcester, Roger Phillips and Paul Tuthill. Obviously, the technology has meant that we can have more regular meetings. That's been very useful. But just a quick question without prolonging the meeting, and it's probably a little bit unfair because obviously Tracy's had to leave, but she's indicated in the chat that obviously she's going to write in with her question, so perhaps we can return a question as well. It was I don't know how much all members are aware, but obviously the PCC has commissioned a piece of work from consultants, from private consultants, to look at the effectiveness and review the alliance. And in view of the events of the last week or so, I just wonder if that is still going to happen, going to take place, because it strikes me that if they're not going to even reconsider a business case until May, June next year, any work that is done now is going to be meaningless because things will have moved on. So it was just to try and gain an understanding while Tracy was in the meeting, but obviously, as I say, she's had to leave. But whether we're able to fire that back at them to try and understand exactly where that piece of work is going, if anywhere. But in terms of the general direction that we're going in, I think there's a lot of work to do, but there's some encouraging signs. Thanks
for that. Thanks for that, Chris. I was just going to say, but when we did wind up at the end, because I'm sorry that Tracy's left, because I was looking to ask some specifics, but she's now left. What I was going to say was, we do have a scheduled meeting for tomorrow, and I was going to suggest working with Lynn and yourself, Chris, that we defer this for the reasons that you've just made. I don't see the point in it when we've got an ongoing debate as far as the business case is concerned, but we'll have a chat later, briefly. John Price has indicated he wants to speak. John?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. It was just to echo that statement, Chris. I'm glad you brought it forward. She seems to have left at her own convenient time. But I think it's not a case of collaborative working. I think it's just really pushing forward how professional Shropshire Fire is and the directions they're really going, and probably leaving other services behind. I'm very proud of them. Thank you.
Correct. Okay, well, if there aren't any other comments, what I would like is so that we go on to the recommendation and we have a proposer and a seconder, and then we can take the vote and then move on quickly.
Chair, we have a proposed. Councillor Price has proposed and Councillor Roberts has seconded.
Please do. Absolutely, please do.
Okay, well, let's have a quick vote round. Who is left with us? Lynn?
Okay, Councillor Adams.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Blundell.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Carter.
4.
Thank you. Councillor D.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Hartin.
Hello, 4.
Thank you. Councillor Lavery.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Mellings.
4.
Councillor Milner.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Minories left the meeting. Councillor Pardy.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Price, you proposed. Councillor Roberts, you seconded. Councillor Thompson.
4.
Thank you. And Councillor Wynne.
4.
Thank you. There we go, Chair.
Right, thank you. We now move on to the exclusion of press and public. Tracy's obviously left. Don't know any other press and public that we need to tell, but I will read this out.
Chair. Sorry,
it's all right. Item 18, which is not excluding press.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've missed that. Sorry, apologies. I've got that. It's been going on that long. You must take my apology. Item 18, Corporate Risk Management Annual Report. Sorry, Jed.
Apologies, John. I'm afraid I've got to leave for another Skype meeting. Apologies.
Okay, then. Thank you, Nigel, for your input.
Thank you, Chair.
Item 18.
Okay, this is the annual risk management report. So the Corporate Risk Register is reported to SAP at each meeting, but best practice guidance indicates that the Fire Authority should receive an annual report. Section 5 of the report just summarises activities throughout the year. So what's gone on the register, what's come off the register, what's been reported to committees. It also covers the internal audit review in December of our risk management and business continuity processes. And again, internal audit have given a good assessment of the services risk management and business continuity processes. Appendix A covers the current risk register and the current entries on the register. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
Any questions? If not, I'll ask for I'm prepared to propose this report. Do we have a seconder?
Councillor Mellings has also proposed, so
okay, Councillor
we'll
Mellings.
Take that as
We'll take that. We'll take the vote now, if we may.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Adams.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Blundell.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Carty proposed. Councillor D.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Lavery.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Mellings, you seconded. Councillor Milner.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Pardy.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson. Councillor Thompson. Okay. Councillor Wynne.
4.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go back to where I made the mistake now. We'll continue. Item 19, exclusion of press and public. Do members agree that under section 100A, block 4, the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the following items on the grounds that they involve a likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by the provisions of Part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Act by virtue of paragraphs 1, 2, 3 and 4. Do you have a proposal and a seconder that we do this?
Keith Roberts proposed, Chair.
Yeah, proposed.
Yeah, proposed Keith. Pauline seconding, I think, or somebody else.
Okay.
Do we have to ask for another vote on that one?
You do need to vote, Chair, I'm afraid.
Yeah, we've got to vote again. All right. Want to continue.
Chair,
Look, it won't last for much longer, but still.
Perhaps if people could just indicate dissent rather than assent.
Yeah.
So if there's any dissension,
Any
indicate there.
dissensions? No, and we're all in support.
Okay.
Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you. Thank you, Anthea.
Okay,
Right,
we'll
I just
move
need
on
to make
item 20 then.
Chair.
Yeah.
It's important that I need to check that we've stopped live streaming because this bit can't go on the
you check then
public website. So I'm just messaging our comms
Okay.
officer. Thank you. I'll just wait for confirmation.